Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome back, everyone. Call to order this July 9th, 2025 regular meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission. Welcome also to Mr. Tavera, who's helping us out tonight. Would you please call the roll?
Chair Aiken.
Here.
Vice Chair Chang.
Here.
Commissioner Heckman.
Here.
Commissioner James. Here. Commissioner G. Here. Commissioner Peterson. Here. Commissioner Templeton.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments for items that are not on the agenda?
Through the chair, I have not received any public comment cards or online.
Very good. Thank you. Assistant Director Armour, do we have any requests for agenda changes?
No agenda changes.
All right. Shall we start with you for reports?
Yes, thank you. So I did want to start by introducing Sam Tavera, who is joining us from the Clerk's Department. He will be supporting the Planning and Transportation Commission as well as our other boards for the next few months. And so you've seen some correspondence from him, but you can reach out to him similar as you did to Veronica in the past if you have any questions, issues, or need support. So then I will move on to the next page here, the director's report, to just give you an update on upcoming items for the Planning and Transportation Commission. We'll go to the next slide. There we go. So July 30th is your next meeting. We have scheduled the next review of the draft stream protection ordinance, and we have a request for hearing on a conditional use permit at 400 Mitchell Lane. In the following meeting will be August 13th. However, at this time, we do not have any agenda items, and so that agenda is not yet set. Also wanted to remind you all, any who haven't yet done it, that the city does require you to do the anti-harassment training that is required to be completed by the end of this month. Next slide. And so then council updates. We had a couple of meetings in June that included items that were reviewed by the Planning and Transportation Commission. The Safe Streets for All plan was approved on June 2nd, and there was an urgency ordinance in accordance with Senate Bill 1123 that was approved on June 9th by City Council. And a reminder that City Council is on break through the end of this month. That concludes my report. I will then now pass off to our new Chief Transportation Official, who's here to introduce herself to you, Riolo.
Hello, I'm Ria Hoots-Barrett-Lowe, new Chief Transportation Official, and really excited to be here. I'm looking forward to bringing a few transportation-related items and getting to know you more. And I also have some updates on transportation. Do you want them now? Okay, so we have a couple of updates. So as was mentioned already, the Safety Action Plan has been adopted at the beginning of June. Also, El Camino Real, you might have noticed that a lot of the work has been done. So the paving has all been completed. The striping is 95% complete. There's just a little bit more to go by the end of, I think, August. The quick curbs, which is those vertical delineators between the bicycle facility and the travel lanes for vehicles, those I'm not sure what percentage complete, but they should be completed within the next couple of weeks. Caltrans has said the 18th of July for completion of that. And then the no parking signage, some of that has been done. Actually, most of it has been done, but they expect to complete the rest of them by the end of August. And so they could potentially start enforcing after that. And then electrical signal detection will be done by December. So the signals are not really working the way that they should be yet, but that will happen towards the end of the year.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Armour or Ms. Lowe? Mr. Templeton, I have a light on for you. Is that? Vice Chair Chang.
Hi, welcome. I have a question that may not be related to El Camino per se, but maybe it is. The intersection at Page Mill and El Camino was having a lot of problems, maybe more last month. I don't know, I wasn't driving it as much this month. But do you know what the cause of that was? Was it related to the Caltrans work or
Was it Page Mill or was it University?
Page Mill?
Oh, okay. I can look into that and find out.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
curious because it was, and every time it happens, obviously, it causes a massive backup. But
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
thanks.
Commissioner G.
Thank you, Chair. I had a quick question for Assistant Director Armour on the slide. I think you referenced an urgent ordinance that was passed by City Council. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on what that bill was about?
Sure, I can give a brief summary, and then also this full staff report that was presented to the council for consideration has additional background. Senate Bill 1123 was a Senate bill that actually went into effect on July 1st of this year. And it is just at a high level, similar to SB 9, but allows for a subdivision up to 10 lots. There are certain criteria, but keeps it as a ministerial process, meaning no discretion. But there was an opportunity for local governments to set a process and certain types of regulation. One of the key things was to choose whether those new lots would be allowed to have accessory dwelling units allowed on them or not. And so this was an item to have council provide direction as a temporary urgency ordinance. It is the sort of thing that then we will need to bring to Planning Commission for a recommendation on a permanent ordinance to implement that as a permanent part of the code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Heckman.
Just a question on, and welcome, a question on the progress on El Camino. Have you heard the status of the extensions of these bike lanes that are now on El Camino through Palo Alto, down through Mountain View and up through Menlo Park? Are they in a similar condition of near completion?
I believe so. I think that they may be further along in Mountain View, just from what I've seen, because they started at that end with the delineators. So yeah, but similar level, and that the electrical, I think, is at the same time as well.
All right, thank you.
Same schedule.
Any other questions? All right, if no, I believe it's time to move on to our first item. So may we have the staff presentation?
All right. Good evening, Chair Aiken and Vice Chair Chang and Commissioners. My name is Amanda Demmel, and I am joined this evening by Community Services Director Kristen O'Kane. We're also joined virtually by our Master Planning Consultants Concordia, virtually from New Orleans, Stephen Bingler and Elizabeth Chen, who will introduce themselves fully as they present in the coming slides. We are here this evening to host a study session and share with you an update on our project and the 3 conceptual site layouts and circulation plans for the Cubberley Master Plan located at 4000 Middlefield Road. Next slide, please. Before we share with you the conceptual plans, we want to provide you a brief background on the project, since this is our first meeting with you on this project. A comprehensive background summary of actions to date is attachment A in your packets, but we will briefly cover a few key highlights now. The Cubberley site is a total of 35 acres. The city currently owns 8 acres and leases much of the remaining 27 acres from PAUSD, which is the Palo Alto Unified School District. In October of 2024, PAUSD and the City Council approved a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, outlining future conditions, which included a land purchase of 7 additional acres by the city. This is contingent on a successful bond measure by voters in November of 2026. In December 2024, the city initiated a new master planning process building upon the previous 2019 master plan. Next slide, please. Concordia is leading the master planning process once again, which is a great benefit as they led the 2019 effort. So they have extensive knowledge of the Cubberley site, our community, and have established relationships with our staff. The city has also contracted with FM3 to lead polling efforts and Lou Edwards Group to lead our ballot strategy. City Council also established an ad hoc committee to review and advise staff on efforts related to polling and development of a ballot measure, including polling, financial and revenue forecasting, master planning, and community outreach. Next slide, please. A great deal of work has been completed to date on the work plan. Some of the milestones are listed here. February 18th, the City Council hosted their visioning session for the Cubberley site. March 19th, we held our first master planning community meeting. April 21st, the City Council gave direction on poll number 1, which was then released on April 28th, and then reviewed the results with the City Council on June 9th. Recently, on June 12th, we held our second community meeting for the master planning process. June 19th, we went to the Public Art Commission, and recently on June 24th, the Parks and Recreation Commission. The next set of milestones coming up just through September, otherwise this would be a very long list, is we are meeting with you all here tonight at the Planning and Transportation Commission. We will be visiting the Architectural Review Board next week on July 17th. We'll be going to City Council on August 18th. September 17th, we will hold our third and final community meeting, and September 23rd, back to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Next slide, please. In your packets, you will find a full summary of community meetings 1 and 2, describing in more detail the meeting activities, as well as a broader summary of the results. What we'd like to highlight briefly on this slide are the key themes and priorities that we heard in meeting 1, to have those be top of mind as we frame the conversation tonight, to share those guiding principles in Concordia's designs that they're about to present to you. The key themes were flexibility, inclusivity, sustainability, and affordability. The top priorities that the community shared and are wanting are multi-purpose spaces, wellness access, green space, and community gathering areas. For meeting 2, which was recently held on June 12th, over 130 community members attended and reviewed the 3 concept designs and gave feedback through group activities and individual ratings on layout, access, and site experience. The full summary report for meeting 2 will be published soon. The preliminary findings show a strong preference for partially underground parking and concerns about the above ground structure, general preference for new construction and some support for partial renovation if it results in significant cost savings, emphasis on separating bike and pedestrian paths for safety, and appreciated the direct bike connection from Nelson to Middlefield. Strong support for public gathering spaces that encourage community interaction and appreciated the large, flexible, open spaces. The overall rankings were concept 1, the diagonal, scored the highest across the 6 evaluation categories, and concept 3, the linear, was a close second. Next slide, please. Now I will turn it over to Elizabeth and Stephen from Concordia to introduce themselves and share with you the 3 conceptual designs for the site. Elizabeth?
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us and for this opportunity to get y'all's feedback on improving Cubberley. My name is Elizabeth Chen. I'm an architect at Concordia, and I'm the project manager for this Cubberley project. Stephen?
I'm Stephen Bingler. I'm the founder and CEO of Concordia. I'm delighted to be here with you guys again. We enjoyed the first round of this, and we're very excited about drilling down to this implementation phase. And Elizabeth's going to walk you through the presentation, and then we're going to be available for questions and answers after that.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Stephen. Okay, so we are going to go over the 3 concept designs that we presented at the community meeting last month. One thing to note is that the existing site features Well, if you basically broke out the square footages of the existing site, you would get that bar graph. That's the top bar graph. And then if you took the proposed designs, all three concept designs that we are proposing increase the number of square footage for outdoor space, as well as indoor space, as well as parking. So again, just important to note that all three schemes have roughly the same amount of outdoor, indoor, and parking square footage. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the three concept designs that we'll be showing to you are the diagonal concept design, the grid concept design, and the linear concept design. Of note, the diagonal did receive the most cumulative positive responses, so I'll be spending a little bit more time on that scheme, but I'll also point out some of the features that resonated or didn't resonate with the grid and the linear schemes. For each concept design, I'll talk about building layouts and massing, which includes setbacks and height. We'll also talk about outdoor space in relation to the promenades and also pedestrian and bike circulation. And then for each concept design, there are shown three different options. So there's sub options for each concept design. The first option is for all new construction. That means demoing the existing buildings and building all new. The second option shows renovation of three of the buildings, which I'll show you in the next slide. And then the third option shows structured parking, which is basically a multi-story parking garage. And on the next slide, you can see those options sort of diagrammed out. Okay, so as a bit of a graphic legend, that the left image under new construction show anything shown in white on the concept designs indicates a new construction building. There's two basic types of new buildings. You can see that larger square building at the top. That denotes the Recreation and Wellness Center, which includes four hard courts as well as associated spaces. And then the other building type is that more linear building type. This is shown as a 70-foot wide bay that can take the form of different configurations. The reason why we're showing that 70-foot bay is because it's a convenient dimension for flexible uses. Everything that is in Cubberley right now, besides the courts, like the basketball courts, can fit in that 70-foot wide bay, whether that's classrooms, even the theater, parking, multi-use space, flexible rental space, etc. Those can all sort of get chopped up into that 70-foot wide bay. So that's why you'll see that 70-foot wide sort of snake in a lot of the schemes. Okay, under partial renovation, you'll see that sandy colored building. So anywhere you see that sand colored building, that denotes partial renovation. The three buildings that we're proposing that could be partially renovated or renovated are the pavilion, the theater, and then building I, which is the only two-story building, which is in the center of campus. That's the one that's turned at a bit of an angle. When we say renovation, what we mean is a full gut down to the structural elements. These three buildings are concrete frame and tilt-up panel. That includes full code updates such as seismic, accessibility, sustainability with all new utilities and MEP systems. And then to note, these first two options, new construction and partial renovation, they show, they include a partially underground parking, which is denoted by that dotted line in both of those images. And then for the third option, that shows structured parking. So anywhere where you see that dark gray block building, that will denote a structured parking, which is a 4-story parking garage. And then that circle denotes the speed ramp to get up to it. Of note is that we're proposing something that Palo Alto is already proposing, which is a flat floored parking garage. That means that in the future, if there's less need for car use and parking, that parking garage can get turned into program use, either all at once or floor by floor, depending on the demand for parking at that time. Okay, so now we can get on to the concept designs. So that next slide, thank you. The next slide shows the concept 1, the diagonal scheme. And again, this is the one that's received the most positive cumulative responses from the community meeting. The main design move for the diagonal scheme is that connection of the bike route from Nelson Drive, shown off the top of the page, cutting through the campus at that diagonal and connecting that bike and pedestrian route to the bike and pedestrian route that's along Middlefield. The buildings also reinforce that design move, celebrating that bike and pedestrian connection and making it a real design feature. As the buildings flank that promenade and really highlight it, they also start to form courtyards or outdoor spaces in between the buildings, which is something that community members also responded well to. They liked the openness and scale of those open spaces between the buildings. Of note, the vehicular access in all of the concept designs is similar. We're proposing to keep the access points on either side of the site, so on the left and the right side of the site in this image. And then off of those existing vehicular access points, you can see these horseshoe-shaped figures, which denote mobility hubs. That can mean things like, Uber or car drop-off, but it's also meant to be multimodal, supporting many modes of transportation, such as transit, bikes, pedestrians, ride shares, etc. One note is that Greendale School is shown off to the left in all of the schemes that's existing to remain. Okay. On the next slide, you'll see a 3-dimensional view of that scheme. So you can see in all of the schemes, actually, we're proposing a massing strategy that keeps the lower buildings, the 1-story buildings, towards Middlefield to mimic the scale of the single-story residential buildings across Middlefield. And then towards the back of the site, we're proposing more of the 2-story buildings. That gym building, the more square building that you see on the right side, that obviously has higher ceilings for a basketball court. And what you're seeing here is 2 basketball courts shown on the 1st floor, 2 basketball courts shown on the 2nd floor. You'll also see here the protected trees on campus. By no means are these the only trees that are going to be on the plan, but these are definitely the trees that we know exactly where they are and that they're definitely staying. But you can expect to see more trees and landscaping as well. And then one last thing that I'll note here is the setbacks and height limitations. So all of our designs, our concept designs show complying with the setbacks on all sides and complying with the height limitations. And not only are we complying with them, but we're buffering them. They're set back more than what's required. The closest it comes is if you see on the right side, that the corner of that building is about 40 45 feet away from the setback. It's a lot more than what the ordinance requires. But okay, so the next slide shows that second option for renovation. So again, you'll see that same diagonal scheme, that concept design, but with that second option for renovation. Again, the tan buildings denote a renovated building. That's the theater, the pavilion, and building I. And on the next slide, you'll see the third option for the structured parking. So that darker gray mass shown on the upper center left of the image is that structured parking. Again, it's 4 stories. And again, it's still meeting the setback and height requirements per the zoning ordinance. Okay, so on the next slide, we'll start with the second concept design, the grid scheme. And the main design move for the grid scheme is this network of orthogonally crossing bike and pedestrian promenades. So again, it does definitely connect the Nelson bike and pedestrian routes to the Middlefields bike and pedestrian routes, this time at an orthogonal orthogonal relationship. The outdoor spaces, there's more of the outdoor spaces, but they're slightly smaller. Just a reminder that all of the concept designs have roughly the same square footage of open space and buildings. This one features the same square footage, just distributed amongst more but smaller open spaces. Okay. And then the next slide, you'll see that in the 3-dimensional view, again, the first option is for new construction. Again, with a similar massing scheme with the 1-story buildings along Middlefield, the 2-story buildings along the back of the site, and also the vehicular access is similar as well with those mobility hubs coming off of the existing vehicle access points. Okay, and then the next slide shows the second option for the grid scheme with the renovation of the pavilion, the theater, and building I. And then the next slide shows that third option for the structured parking in a similar location, again, still meeting the setback and height requirements. Okay, so concept 3 on the next slide is the linear scheme. And the main design feature of this one celebrates a central outdoor amenity space. It's that area sort of in a rectangular arrangement of orange promenade lines. So that area is an outdoor space that is for bike and pedestrian flow. It's also for community gathering, which was an idea that resonated with a lot of community members. And it's an inviting gesture for people both within the campus as well as for people, coming off of Middlefield. Okay, the next slide shows the new construction 3D view. Again, the 1-story buildings facing Middlefield, the 2-story buildings towards the back of the site. All of the protected trees are in this plan. The next slide shows that second option again with the renovated theater, pavilion, and building I. And then the next slide again shows that third option for the structured parking, that 4-story building in gray. Okay, the next slide is just a summary of all of the concept designs that we just presented to you. After analyzing the comments from the community meetings, we we have come up with a design direction to proceed generally with the diagonal layout, which people resonated with, and incorporating features of that central community gathering, inviting open space similar to the linear scheme, and also incorporating efficient flow of paths that was from the grid layout. We're going to be also developing these details and getting more into the nitty gritty in conjunction with our consultants who are transportation engineers, our structural engineer, cost estimator, and our sustainability consultant. So you can look forward to an update at the ARB later this month. All right, thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Amanda. Thank you so much.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, thank you, Elizabeth. The next steps in the master planning process include collecting and analyzing the feedback received here tonight, along with the input gathered at the June 12th community meeting, the June 24th PRC meeting, and staff and Concordia will present the concept designs next to the Architectural Review Board, as mentioned earlier tonight, next week on July 17th. Following these summer meetings, several key milestones remain. At the third and final community meeting on September 17th, Concordia will present one refined concept plan for additional public input. This will ultimately lead to their final presentation to the community and city council on December 8th, which will include the proposed master plan, cost estimates, and phasing scenarios. Next slide, please. All right, so we have shared a lot of information with you tonight. So to recap what staff are requesting from the commission this evening, we would love your feedback on the 3 Cubberley conceptual designs, including the same aspects the community evaluated, such as the arrival and parking, pedestrian circulation, building scale and physical space organization, landscape and green space organization, the balance of buildings and green space, being a good neighbor to the surrounding neighborhoods and local businesses. Also, any additional comments or general feedback that can help inform the refinement of the preferred concept are encouraged and appreciated. Next slide, please. All right, that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. We now invite your comments, your feedback, discussion. Director O'Kane and I, as well as Concordia, Elizabeth and Stephen, are available to answer your questions. I'm going to please ask Mr. Taverna to go back to the previous slide, so we'll just keep our questions up. And yeah, we welcome your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great deal of information to absorb, but I think we're ready for it. Clarifying questions, beginning with Commissioner Templeton.
Hi, thank you. Really appreciated that. I was wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about the underground parking along Middlefield. You said it was going to be multiple stories deep. Can you tell me how many?
Yes, go ahead, Elizabeth or Stephen.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, sorry if I miscommunicated earlier, the partially underground parking shown flanking Middlefield is just shown as one level. So, that would just be one floor. The multi-story parking structure is a separate option, and that's the one in the third option on each concept design that was shown in like the darker gray building, and that would be like a 4-story parking structure.
But it's above ground.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was looking at the elevation at the at the site on Middlefield, and I was like, it's 17 feet. So, are you at all concerned about the sea level at all with the partially underground parking garage?
Yeah, so I think the feedback that we have received is that it's it's feasible. And I know that there is some pushback against fully underground parking, but the fact that this is partially underground alleviates a lot of those concerns with the waterproofing, and that it would be that would be verified with something like a geotechnical report or something like.
I
And
think maybe if I could interject here, what we're describing here is a parking level that's half underground and half above ground. That solves a lot of problems. Number one, it's less expensive than going fully underground, but it's also provides air circulation for the half of the building that's above ground. The walls would be open, so the air could circulate, which eliminates that sort of dark, dank environment that you usually get with underground parking. It also allows us the ability to actually occupy the space above the parking. We can either it gives us an opportunity in the landscaping to actually mound up and either cover that parking roof with either earth or with public amenities. So we're actually, especially when we think about the value of land per square foot in Palo Alto, there's a lot to be said for taking advantage of being able to use every single square foot of the property that we can possibly muster for public use. And we're still studying the relationship between the structured parking, the four-story structured parking versus this half underground idea for the one-story parking. But those are the two options that we're looking at the moment.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you're definitely preaching to the choir about the value of land and land use with this particular commission. So we're in complete alignment on that. Are you from New Orleans, by the way?
Yes. Well,
so from enough. Okay. Well, you may understand what I'm about to say through that lens. This particular part of town is prone to flooding. It's closer to the bay than other parts that are hillier and higher elevation. So we just want to make sure that the bottom line is what I'm clarifying is that we want to make sure that the designs that you're proposing are feasible and that has been considered. So it sounds like designs will be approved before some point when it goes to council by some engineering people?
Yes, for sure. Stormwater management is very much high on our list.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Chang.
Before we give feedback, I wanted to ask some questions because I'm not sure I understood the designs fully with respect to the promenades. So what is I understand what some of the use cases could be for really large open spaces or smaller open spaces, but then what about, I'm trying to think what the promenades could be used for, and I thought it would be really helpful if you guys could just give some examples of how other communities use this or how other spaces with, the large wide promenades in options 2 and 3 use that type of outdoor space.
I'll jump in and tell you that it's a pedestrian mall in a way, and there are a lot of the functions that are taking place on the site are functions that invite the opportunity for public access. And what we're proposing is that the space in that particular case, the space between the buildings would be, in this case, in the case of the diagonal, now we started off with 70-foot clearance, and now we're looking at 100-foot clearance. Within that clearance, there's a pedestrian way of basically a sidewalk that goes adjacent to each one of the buildings on either side. And in addition to that, there's a bicycle and pedestrian way, a bicycle path actually, and then also green space in the middle that would be for children's playgrounds and other things that would happen in that linear space. We have very large courtyards that can also accommodate things, everything that we haven't drilled down yet, but everything you can imagine, like amphitheaters and children's playgrounds and even large groves of trees. We can actually imagine some small urban forests in these large open spaces. So we're trying to create a variety of these public open spaces, right? Not rather than having one big open space, we have, in this case, two large courtyards, and we call them courtyards, but they're really almost like urban forest. And then this linear promenade is one that kind of celebrates the bicycle circulation and pedestrian circulation that goes diagonally through the site.
Okay, I think my questions were less about the diagonal one where the promenade is much more narrow and say option 3 where it's really wide. So I was like, what goes down there? A farmer's market, or, how would that space be used? And it's interesting to think about playgrounds and stuff.
Well, I will tell you that the way we approach this project is that we presented all 3 options. We didn't ask the community which one do you choose, which one would you vote for. We asked them, what do you like the most about each one of these? And they liked the diagonal in terms of geometry, but they also liked, as Elizabeth noted, the linear scheme. They liked the broader promenade. So now we're going to go back and do a hybrid scheme that has the diagonal geometry, but a much wider promenade, which will become more of a public open space.
Okay.
A linear public open space.
My second question is it's just a clarification to make sure that I understood correctly. So the 70-foot wide building, that's wide enough to accommodate a theater, like the existing theaters
Yes.
were not rebuilt. Okay, so great.
By the way, it's also wide enough to have a corridor in the middle with double loaded spaces on either side, or it can be a large space that would be a large gathering spaces. So it's a very flexible. Flexibility is really at the core of this design because over the next 50 years, 100 years, lifespan of this project, those spaces could accommodate any number of different things. So our idea is that we're trying to develop, at least in the master planning phase, we're trying to develop a concept that can provide the most flexibility for the most variety of different uses that could take place in those spaces.
Okay, my final question is kind of around concept 1. There's that big triangle of space that fronts Middlefield. What was the thinking behind that space?
That's going to be a grand entrance, and as we move further into it, we had a great meeting this morning with our transportation consultants, and it appears that might very well actually be an interaction with transit. So the pedestrian and bicycle and transit could easily take place at that location, but you can imagine that's kind of like the grand entrance into the project.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you. First question is for staff. So this project is reliant on a bond measure that's anticipated to go to the voters in November of next year. I'm curious, through the various meetings, both with members of the public and with various bodies of the city, can you tell me what, if any, discussions have been had about the possibility of private funding of all or any part of this through, and I'm thinking of, philanthropic activities?
Good evening. I'm Kristen O'Kane with Community Services. So we have started those conversations. I'll use an example of the Friends of the Recreation Wellness Center, which is a fairly new Friends group. They're a nonprofit in Palo Alto who are interested in raising funds to build we don't have the plans up, but to build a recreation wellness center, which would include gyms and other wellness spaces. So we're looking at opportunities like that to help with the costs of the project.
All right. And I realize how early we are in this project, but you do have a scale now in terms of the amount of square footage, which may be all new, some of it may be renovated. And so are there sort of gross round numbers of the kind of the scale of the cost of this project that are available to us?
So we're working on those. We have a cost estimator, or Concordia does, based in California, not New Orleans. And we're also working with our own internal departments to get those cost estimates, both for new construction and renovation. And we also need to consider that the utility infrastructure system likely needs to be upgraded. So that would be a consideration as well. So we're working on that and anticipate to have that in early fall.
Okay, thank you. And then a question for Mr. Yang. Governor Newsom has recently signed into state law some some limitations on the California Environmental Quality Act. Those primarily address residential projects, but I'm wondering if any part of that is offering us some streamlining of the review for this project.
So as you noted, those are primarily for residential projects, and there are a few narrow exemptions also for commercial projects, but I don't believe that this would fall within any of those.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Dr. Peterson.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the nice things about this project, which I think your map doesn't fully capture, is that this is an incredibly working class and blue collar area of Palo Alto. It has probably the largest, existing affordable housing type complex around this site. And so because of that, I want to ask some questions about the walkability of this site. I don't see the map really showing how does this tie into the adjacent sites. Like even the Grand Corridor down the middle of the site is great. However, the Grand Corridor doesn't actually tie into any foot traffic. And so do you have a map where you can show the public transit, regional affordable housing that's what, just across the street essentially?
That I'll respond to that. That we don't have that drawing available to you right now, but what we did was we took all of the planning that we did in the previous planning process that tied in all those links, and we incorporated that into the plan now. So all of those linkages will be made, and we actually extended it one step further. And are making a linkage even into the shopping center that's to the north end of the site as well. We're extending a pedestrian link into that as well. So all pedestrian linkages will be, and we just had our first meeting this morning with our transportation consultant, Farron and Pierce, and with that will be high on our agenda to make sure that all those linkages are there.
Thank you. That answers my question. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner G.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple larger style questions. So I guess I'm trying to understand, at the end of the process, the master plan, is that supposed to be like, can you help me elaborate a little bit more? Like, is it like we have all the buildings already set, like it's actually like a concrete plan, or is there a difference between a master plan and an actual plan that we want from the end of this?
Sure, I can take that one. So this is a master plan that will consist of a concept plan. So how the buildings exist on the site, what might go in those buildings, how much outdoor space there is. Once this master plan is done, we will then need to, and we have the funding, we'll need to do actual construction drawings and engineering drawings. So between the concept plan and the engineering drawings, I think we could expect there be some, minor changes just to make sure that the fit is actually appropriate. So I don't know, Stephen or Elizabeth, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I would just say that, to build on that is that master planning is literally, as Kristen noted, we're getting the general layout of the buildings. Then there will be an architect who will be brought on board and to actually design the buildings. And at that level, a whole new design process that starts with schematic design on the buildings through design development, construction documents, and then construction, the actual construction will take place. So the master plan is dealing with these larger issues, more of the urban design issues, and then the building issues will be addressed in a separate phase.
Thank you. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, is the expectation that, let's say, the drawings that have been provided in the packet are kind of general locations for buildings, let's say, and then do we expect those to be significant changes before the engineering implementation, or we just say like we would ideally like to follow the outcome from what we came up with the master plan?
We would definitely, especially if we're asking voters to approve a ballot measure to fund a concept plan that they helped create and that we told them would be built. Our goal would be to follow that as closely as possible.
And I would add one more thing is that because we're going through a pretty extensive community engagement process, we're also going to be querying the community about even things about architectural style. And that information will be passed on to the next phase when the architect will have information from the community about preferences that they might have for what the buildings look like and what materials they might be made of.
All right, thank you. And then I have a kind of a follow-up question here, which is, it seems like a lot of the discussion today is around the building designs. I haven't really heard very much about usage, and I know, Stephen, you had mentioned it about flexible usage, but at least in my mind, the way I think about what I want to build is what do I want to support? And I think it's a little bit hard to wrap my head around the concept of trying to design building shapes before I know what I want to put there. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I can address that. During community meeting 1, that meeting was more focused on programming, and it used the previous master planning process back from 2019 as a guide. So there is a list of programs and uses and activities that we have in a list, and they do include like all of the uses that are at Cubberley now, and some more expanded uses, such as more gyms, and also fine tuning some more of the programming uses. That programming document will also be part of the master plan document.
Thank you. My follow-up question there is, I think, so this is some feedback I've also gotten from members of the public who attended both of the sessions, is that it's really hard to comment on which layout is beneficial if they don't know actually how much space each of the different activities take. So say a theater takes like, I don't know, I don't even know the units, right? Like, I don't know, 1,000 square feet, let's say minimum, or 10,000 square feet, right? It's really hard to comment on which designs, or like, oh, if, for example, the diagonal building, maybe you can't actually put a theater in the shape of the building. And so I think it'd be really helpful to be able to provide, kind of attach these two together, right? Say, I like the design from this, but actually this removes the possibility for me to yeah. So I know that's not a clarifying question, but I just want to like ask if that will be provided, like the square footage, or if you have any usage attachment to any of these.
And we will get to that in the next phase. And I can assure you that all of the uses that are currently programmed can fit into the configurations that we've outlined.
All right, thank you. And then I had a couple of specific questions regarding some of the diagrams here. So on each of the different diagrams on all three concepts, I believe you included the mobility hub as part of the green space. So I guess I was wondering, like, is the green space, I guess, how big is the mobility hub, or is this, should you be able to do green space activity there?
Yes, some of our precedents for mobility hubs, they can vary in scale, and a lot of mobility hubs also include event space, like outdoor event space that you can, set up bollards and, control traffic. So how big that is, we'll definitely get into the next phase. I can't tell you exactly now, but that's part of sort of that design process where we're getting into the specifics and can propose different sizes. But to answer your question, I don't think there's a one size fits all. We're showing two mobility hubs. One of them could support like an outdoor event space or like a food truck gathering or something like that, and the other one could be more minimal.
Thank you. And then I want to kind of piggyback off of Vice Chair Chang's comment about the Grand Promenade on concept 3, which you're describing as kind of it's on packet page 35, and it's kind of the space between the two promenades. Can you give me a sense of like how wide that Grand Promenade, like the middle space, is going to look like approximately? I'm just trying to visualize as well, like what actually could fit there, because you had mentioned putting a playground there, but it looks very skinny compared to this. So I was just hoping to get a better sense of what that sounds like.
I'll just the one in the diagonal scheme was 70 feet wide. The one in the linear scheme was, I think, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but more on the neighborhood of 200 feet wide.
That's correct.
The one that we're addressing now would be on the diagonal, a promenade that's about a 100-foot wide promenade.
Thank you. And then I have one final question, which is, you had started the whole conversation by saying that the square footage of the buildings and the square footage of the green space is the same across the three designs. Can you talk a little bit more about how we got there? Like, how did we decide that this is the square footage that we should be having at this time?
I think that goes back to the programming document, which is based on a lot of the work that was done in 2019, where we came up with a document based on programmatic need and community feedback, as well as stakeholder feedback for things like the Recreation and Wellness Center and the theater, as well as the tenants' feedback about their space needs. That square footage has a little bit of flexibility as we develop into, cost estimates and progressing the scheme in conjunction with those cost estimates.
All right, thank you. Those are all for me, Chair.
Commissioner Heckman?
I already asked my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner James, anything for you?
Yes, Commissioner G covered a lot of my questions and concerns. I think the one that's most concerning to me, which I've tried to get my mind around, is the idea of, well, I guess I find the polygons a little, I hate to say arbitrary, but I find them a little abstract and arbitrary. I agree with Commissioner G that, I want to, we can argue about whether form follows function or whether they should meet in the middle or whatever, but I feel like it does feel, I don't know what it's connected to. And I find that pretty troubling, to be honest. And I find, I guess I'm stumbling over the idea that an architect would come in after this sort of geometry had been set, and they would just have to accept that and just, design, finish the design. And I'm just wondering if that's, I find that very constraining very early on with very little information in terms of my own comfort level and my understanding of it. And I guess I just want, that's what I want to clarify is if, at that, so let's say we get a concept based on whatever the prevailing consensus view takes into account all the design considerations that have been studied and researched from 2019 to today, and the feedback from, it is clear that a great deal of effort has gone into getting feedback from the community. But I guess I worry about sometimes the best of intentions can end in kind of a collective averaging, if you understand what I'm saying. And I guess what I want to know is if it gets, the bond measure passes, and then there is presumably some sort of competition for the architect firm that's chosen, are they handed this and then they're fairly limited in the scope of what they can do? Or can they have a new concept, that can be considered? I guess that's really, that's the big question I have.
That's actually almost the very definition of a master plan, is that the reason to do a master plan is to do that high level. We're architects as well, by the way. So is to do that concept phase and to narrow down and the urban planning issues. And then the next phase will be architectural issues. I think notwithstanding that, diagonals look different than orthogonal buildings. I don't know exactly the percentage, but, somewhere between 95 and 100% of the buildings shown on this, on even the diagonal scheme, are rectangular buildings. I mean, they do have knuckles at the end of them, but functionally, they're rectangular buildings. So I don't see that there are constraints functionally. Aesthetically, we're nailing down things like pedestrian circulation, things like bicycle circulation. One of the things that the community liked a lot about that diagonal scheme is that if you're riding a bicycle, it's a lot more convenient to just have an even flow rather than always stopping and taking 90-degree turns. So the other thing that they liked about this scheme the diagonal scheme, was that it had two very large open spaces rather than a lot of smaller open spaces. Those are urban design decisions. There are lots of decisions left to be made at the architectural level as far as the building design, what it looks like, what the materials are, and those kinds of things. So it's not unusual that one team, more of an urban planning approach, determines these larger urban planning decisions, and then the architectural decisions carry on from there. I think of it more as a collaboration in a way, because we've done it both ways. We've been on the receiving side of master plans, and we've also developed the master plans. So
they would basically be pretty much constrained to the geometry of whatever is like presented in December.
Yeah, that's right. Whatever it is, and whether it's orthogonal or whether it's diagonal or whatever it is, these are decisions are being vetted with the community at large. And at this point, hundreds of people who have attended these meetings have made the choice that that the diagonal scheme seems to be more appealing than the orthogonal schemes.
Yeah, I'll pause right there.
All right, seeing no other lights, I'll wrap up the clarifying round with what few questions I have left. Thank you for addressing most of the ones I had already. If I've totaled up the numbers correctly, the diagonal concept has about 10% less outdoor space than the other concepts. I wondered if that was because that layout causes the building footprints to be used less efficiently. Therefore, some additional outdoor space had to be committed to the buildings. So what can you tell me about that?
So I think there might be a little bit of a labeling convention. So I know that we've labeled each outdoor space an approximate acreage, but the square footages are approximately the same because the footprints are approximately the same as well. Like if you add up the acreage, it doesn't necessarily add up to the whole pie, is I guess what I'm saying.
I think it's fair to say that the square footages are the same in all three schemes.
Yeah, I guess the concern I had was, is the square footage in the non-rectilinear buildings used as efficiently as in the rectilinear case?
Well, I don't know that that there's any, as an architect, I don't know that there's a correlation between the shape of the square footage and the use of the square footage, and that if the square footage is there and it's laid out properly, then whether it's on the diagonal, whether it's on an orthogonal grid, I think creative architects can use either one of those spaces efficiently. So for all intents and purposes, each one of the schemes are identical in terms of the total square footage and of the building square footage and the open square footage.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to get at, was that these are essentially equivalent despite the labeling, which led me to believe might be otherwise. Earlier, we mentioned severing bicycle and pedestrian paths. So just to get some clarity on that, will all the bike paths also be accompanied by pedestrian lanes that are physically separated? Or are they exclusively bicycle paths?
We haven't gotten down to the level of detail on that, but I know on the promenade itself, the primary circulation from Nelson to Middlefield, our plan is to have completely separate bicycle paths that are separate from the pedestrian paths. I will also say that at this stage of the game in our consultation with the city agencies, and the need to provide access for fire trucks and service vehicles, it's likely that those bicycle circulation paths will be extremely generous.
Okay, just to telegraph, I'll be following up on evaluating some of the layouts in terms of the tendency for creation of desire paths, because they looked different in that characteristic to me. That'll be in the next round.
Okay.
All right. I believe that's all I have. So if there are no more clarifying questions, then it's time for public comment. Mr. Tavera, do we have any hands raised or speaker cards?
Yes, through the chair, I have one request to speak online. Actually, two requests to speak. Oh, three. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second.
Commissioner Heckman, do you have something? I see your light is on.
All right, our first speaker is going to be Sonia B. You can now speak, Sonia.
Yeah, hi. My name is Sonia Bradsky. I'm actually a next door neighbor to Coverly for 29 years. And I guess for me, just a couple comments. I was involved with all three meetings in 2019. I guess for me, I'd love to see Coverly kind of like Lucy Stern providing, events in South Palo Alto, with the same uh, providings like North Palo Alto has. Because like if you look at the Enjoy catalog, most of the offerings are all in North Palo Alto, which is difficult for the people in South Palo Alto that we all have to commute up there. So it'd be really nice to have programming at Coverly, similar to North Palo Alto. Anyway, that's one of my comments. Being a next door neighbor to Coverly, when we've had pouring rain, it's been so nice to go in the pouring rain to the current facility at Coverly and be under those covered walkways. So that's been really so nice because it's not like there's anywhere else really where you've had covered walkways. It seems like with your planning, it doesn't look like there's covered walkways anymore. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. And I am a big bicyclist and I don't like looking at those 90-degree angles that are on your concept because I really need visibility and I don't want to run into people with these 90-degree angle bike pathways. So it needs to be, if they are 90 degrees, I need to have full visibility that I'm not going to have a bike accident with these 90-degree angles. Anyway, and I think it's great to have the flexibility to provide, nice things for the people in the area that when they want to have different events that they can use Coverly's facility. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Renee B. You may now speak, Renee.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, I wanted to say good evening, commissioners and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Renee Baez, and I'm here as a proud representative of the NorCal Carpenters Union. I want to first acknowledge and appreciate the work you are all doing on this important project. This development has the potential to bring real, lasting value to our community, not just in the final product, but also in how it's built and who builds it. I know it's still early in the planning process, but whether it's a renovation or a new construction, we believe this project must ultimately be awarded to a responsible general contractor, one who is committed to hiring local, utilizing registered apprenticeships, and providing healthcare and fair wages to their workers. It matters because when we hire local, we reinvest back into our neighborhoods. Apprenticeships give young people a path to solid, debt-free careers, and when workers are treated fairly, the entire community benefits. Our families, our schools, and our local economy all benefit from this. So I just want to, I know it's still early in the planning process, but I want to make sure or ensure this project isn't just something we're proud of when it's finished, but one we're proud of all the way through because it was built responsibly with good jobs and opportunity for the people who live here. Thank you for your time and all your hard work.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth A. You may now speak, Elizabeth.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Alexis. I too am a neighbor. I'm also a volunteer at one of the organizations at Coverly, and I'm extremely excited about this project. I am a little bit concerned about the process in which we are just now bringing in transportation because one thing I would point out as an actual cyclist, and I was the only cyclist at my table during this planning, that having a grand entrance in the middle of the project on Middlefield doesn't make any sense. If you're a bicyclist or a pedestrian, you're going to want to get off of Middlefield, which is a very busy, pretty unpleasant street at that point, and into the project. So the entrances should be on the corners of them. I mean, if you're a bicyclist, if you're going south, that kind of could work for you if you were coming on Middlefield, which most people try and avoid. But if you're actually going the other direction, you land kind of in a space where you're going to be on the wrong side and going on the wrong side on the bicycle. So I would not think about like a grand promenade on Middlefield. It's not a great place to be. So the main Nelson to Middlefield Road should be connecting to Montrose, which is the main entrance that bicyclists use who are coming from kind of from the east side. And that's what I really don't see in this project right now. The second point I would just like to make is I feel like we're trying to be all these be too nice almost in this version of the project. So we've limited ourselves to 1 story on Middlefield, which I think is an excellent place to have a little bit of density. It would provide more civic presence. I mean, we just over on Middlefield on Charleston, we're just building 4-story Eden housing across from similar single-story housing, which is in a smaller corridor. So I think it would be appropriate to put a couple stories there up front and make people see that there is something going on there. We're going through this effort to protect these trees, which are mostly kind of stunted redwoods, and I'm a tree person. But these, I think, they could be replaced with better and more appropriate trees. We're talking about setbacks on Middlefield. As I said, Middlefield is not a pleasant place to be. Having green space there is kind of a waste. And if there is some setback, this is a city project, those things can be changed. That I would also point out that I am not a fan of buildings that don't have right angles. I lived in one as a college student, and I would say it created some challenges. The final thing I would want to say is, as we're looking for not just within buildings that are flexible, but we should leave some space for new buildings that we haven't even thought of, whether it's, some kind of land bank, it could be surface parking or a green space, which is located in a place that would make construction easy at some point. My final point would just be that be a little cautious about the conclusions you make from the public meeting. It was a little bit hard for people to understand the scale of the buildings and how it would really function. And they were sort of going more on this sort of vibes thing. And I think that's very different than really understanding how it works. Thank you.
Thank you. And quick clarifying point for the chair, I just want to ask one more person has requested to speak after Gary. I just want to confirm if you allow that.
Normally we wouldn't, but given the quality feedback we're getting tonight, I think I'd like to go ahead and allow it.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Gary. After that will be Stacy. Gary, you may now speak.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Gary.
Hello. This is Gary Bradsky. I just had a few comments. I also concur with some, covered space, not just for rain, but for sun. That maybe those are solar panels or something. Maybe they're siding the building. I don't know. But and I join in with allowing for future building. I lived in the Middle East, and they always built the building so that you could add another story or something. At least consider that. The main, I guess, usage that I'd like to see that doesn't really exist so much is kind of a machine shop makerspace. We mentioned that before. I don't see it on the current list, but someplace I go, do I really have to buy, which I'll, could, a laser cutter for my garage that I'll use, a little bit rather than just going to a place and being able to use it. But I guess I'll end on I am a fan more of the diagonal for the looks or the vibe, but the other ones kind of seem like corporate headquarters a little bit. And I'll end on that.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stacy A.
Hi, this is Stacy Ashland. I'm a former Parks and Rec Commissioner in Palo Alto and a longtime participant in the dance studios at Dance Visions at Cubberley. And I know there's been a lot of talk. I've participated in the community meetings as well as the tenant meetings as part of the Dance Visions group. And there's been a lot of talk about what may or may not exist at the new Cubberley when it is rebuilt. And I just wanted to make a strong statement to keep the performing arts, to keep the nonprofit dance studios that have been there, like Dance Visions and and Zohar that have been there for over 30 years, as they are the most important multi-generational thing that is good for mental health, physical health, and a sense of community. So I hope that you will keep these long-term nonprofit tenants such as the dance studios. Thank you.
This concludes public comment.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, it's time for a discussion round. Let's see, I believe Vice Chair Chang and then Commissioner Peterson.
Okay, I'll just kind of read through some of my comments. The first big one that I think others have also said, including some of our public commenters, is in the future, when we're presenting these types of concepts, it's really helpful because of the scale of the space. I mean, I don't know what an acre looks like, but I do have more of a sense what 100 feet looks like. So I think we need a legend on these things that say, this is a bike path, this is a ped path, and this is what 100 feet or whatever unit looks, whatever the unit is, because that, so it was very difficult to give good feedback regarding the 6 topics that, and it might be helpful actually if we pull those 6 topics up so that the commissioners can refer to that as we give our comments. So then I probably should have asked these already, but is a pool one of the use cases that's currently in on the list or not? Because one of the videos I watched online said an outdoor space could include things like a swimming pool. So I just wasn't like, is it in or is it out, or do we know?
Sure. So we used the word green space originally, but we're trying to start to use outdoor space because what we're just showing is what will be buildings, what will be circulation, and what will be outdoor. So there could be some programming or outdoor facilities, like recreational facilities that go in those outdoor spaces. A pool might be one of them. We're still working through what would go where within this site. So
Okay,
we're not quite there yet.
Presumably with the request for a bond measure and a master plan, that would be specified, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Also, I should have asked this, but the yellow lines, I believe, are pedestrian paths, right? So there's a pedestrian path that I believe, if I'm orienting myself correctly, on the right side of all the options, the concepts, that runs right in front of piazzas, possibly because there's a fence there right now, but it's a piazza's parking lot. And so one of my pieces of feedback is that that is probably not a good pedestrian pathway because that would be the front of the grocery store. And that corridor is like one that you avoid because there's tons of cars circulating. It's dangerous. That's not where we really want people going, I don't think. So that was one of my pieces of.
Rick's is there. I'm just saying.
Well, Rick's is there, but I'm not saying we wouldn't go through the Charleston Center, but I'm not sure that's the line because that's at least right now the way car traffic circulates in that lot. It's really, really dangerous. Like the analogy is in front of Walmart in Mountain View, like you want to avoid at all costs that front driveway right in front of the store because it's just kind of crazy, and it is also in front of piazzas. So that's just. That's if I'm understanding correctly there. Regarding being a good neighbor, I wondered if Charleston Center and piazzas have been consulted regarding this.
Yes, they have. And to clarify your first comment, there's already an opening in the gate, so there's already a walkway. And so the plans are just to make it better, safer, more of a throughway. So we've been consulting with those businesses, including piazzas and the property owner. And we recently actually just sent them the updated concept plans to review and be able to provide feedback on. So we've been keeping them updated throughout the process. So at the moment, it's a small gate opening, but there is an opening in the fence. And so we want to essentially just make it drive foot traffic there, hopefully make this kind of a positive relationship for both.
Understood. So it's more that it's indicating that this is an entrance way, but not necessarily the path through that's going through their parking lot necessarily, right? We don't. There are some. There's also an EV charging right now, which makes that whole area even more hazardous. So that's just something to think about, right? Like there's people circling.
Right. And
It's just not a lovely space.
Yeah, Elizabeth
Right.
or even if they want to speak to, I don't know if we've fleshed out exactly once you get onto their site. I think right now we're just going to make that entrance over to their site just more
yeah, that
open
makes
and
sense.
safe.
Okay. That makes sense to me. But in terms of
Yeah,
the
and it looks like Elizabeth can add more there.
Okay.
I think you said it all, Amanda. Yes, that we're intending for that to be an access point. The yellow line is not to be taken literally, just as a trajectory that connects those two sites together.
But we will be drilling down on that and figuring out at a higher level of detail in the next iteration.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the parking, I think I, like many members of the public, think that the underground parking solution would be better, both aesthetically, as well as in terms of using the space. But another thought that I had and a piece of feedback was that, again, having a hard time with the scale, but it's a very large site. And if the parking were all in a surface lot, in a corner of the lot, that would mean that there's actually a very large walking distance potentially. And so the idea of, a parking lot that's underground, but that stretches across the whole site, I like that because it means that for people who might be more mobility challenged, that they could park closer to where they ultimately need to go. So I thought that was an added benefit. And then I also gravitated towards option 1, but again, a little hard. I agree with much of what public commenter Elizabeth Alexis said, where it's, there's a little bit of vibes on this because it's hard for me to understand the scale. I gravitated towards the larger spaces, but one of the things, as I thought about what Lucy Stern offers versus what we have here right now in South Palo Alto is Lucy Stern has like a courtyard, the Lucy Stern courtyard, which is a nice outdoor space that can be used in a semi-private setting. So if you have large open spaces, it's hard to say have a career fair going on in one space and band in another space. And, if somebody wanted to say a wedding ceremony or an outdoor reception of some sort, it might be nice to have a smaller green space that is available in a smaller outdoor space. I can't imagine all the particular uses that there might be, but I do know that other community centers have outdoor spaces where people can have weddings or parties or whatever, but that are semi-private. That wouldn't, if everything's wide open, it's not as conducive to that. So that's just one of the few things that I liked about concept 2. And then in general, I wasn't in love with these huge wide promenades because and again, that was why I asked the question, the clarifying question. Maybe I'm not being imaginative enough in terms of what I would use a long walkway outdoor space for, right? Great for farmers market, maybe great for some sort of tabling. I'm thinking like college campuses, when I see a large, somewhat long open space, what do we do there? Tables to sit by, but is that the best use of the space? And you can't use it for a lot of other things. So I think that it may actually limit some flexibility. And then in terms of being a good neighbor, I think I concur with what Ms. Alexis was saying about, I'm not so sure that it's that important for us to limit the massing on Middlefield as it is. Sure, it might be appreciated, but I'm not, it's across the street. It's, if done well, it could actually be nice to show that there's stuff going on here. And it could also be made welcoming that way. So I'm not married to that idea. I think it's nice to be thoughtful about it. For circulation, I agree. Right now, Middlefield and that section is not a nice place to be. And there's a real, I think, as was highlighted, there's no crosswalk currently right there in the middle. And if that were supposed to be some sort of entrance, it would require some additional planning. Coming at the corners might make a lot more sense. And then finally, the last piece is if the athletic fields are in the back, because it seems like in all the concepts, there's the idea that there'd be some athletic fields next to the recreation center / gym. If that's the case, and if people are using it for, say, soccer or other youth activities, what parents like to do is drop their kids off as close as possible to the field. And also people are schlepping a lot of equipment. And again, I think the distances here are pretty large. I found myself constantly flipping back and forth between Google Maps and these diagrams to try and understand, well, how long would it take for me to walk from point A to point B? So I wonder about the mobility hubs and whether there's the need for some ability to drop off, because if I'm a parent with a 5-year-old, I'm not sure I want to drop them off someplace and then say, okay, bye-bye, I can't see where you're going. I don't have line of sight. I don't know if you're going to get where you're going. So that would involve like parking, walking a substantial distance, and then parking, so circulation wise, particularly with the athletics facilities, it might be important to have some sort of mobility hub drop-off area over there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have Commissioner Peterson and then Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciated the comment on the boulevard. I hadn't thought about that. What is the space used for? That's a good comment. So the walkway to what essentially is the food court next door gets a lot of use at lunch, particularly. I don't know how many years I've sat there while my daughter was in dance school, but I know that walkway through the fence pretty well. Running over there because the grocery store next door has really awesome food to go. So that's the view that's up right now. Actually, the site. One of these views has the Grand Corridor, coming from Middlefield, but really the Grand Corridor at this site really is basically from the shopping center over to the housing. And that's where you see most of the traffic coming from is people walking onto that site, actually from the midpoint into the site and not necessarily from the Middlefield street. Even one of the callers mentioned that really this site, you don't access it from the center, you access from the corners because that's where the crosswalks are. So there's really nobody is ever in the middle of that site very often unless they can't find parking somewhere. So with that, let me bring up another topic. I'm going to try and share my screen and draw a little bit. So have some patience with me as I try to figure this out. Oh, no. Let's try that again. Let's share my screen. Thank you, Sam. It says broadcast. I think that's not what I want.
So share it there and then you share your screen. You're sharing your map, or what did you want to share?
Yeah, I got a map on the screen that I want to share.
The URL or website, or
I guess we can see it. Maybe we'll bring it up. Nah, so I agree with you. As soon as you press screen, it should share the screen. Let's see what it does. Maybe it'll do something. Oh, did it work that time? It did. You did. You fixed it. All right. All right. I didn't do that on purpose. Just be like, I don't know what I'm doing, just so you can. Okay. There we go. Let's see. Perfect. All right, let's see. Okay. So this is the comment I brought up earlier, that I would say this is easily the most complicated walking path in all of Palo Alto. And I think I've walked every walking path in Palo Alto. And this one here actually terrifies me. To go from that Caltrain station to the Cubberley Center, you have to cross Alma, which, I mean, if you make that alone, I mean, it's like that old, what was that game with Frogger? Yes. Yeah, with the log and the alligators. Yeah. So you make it across Alma, then you don't know where you are. You're totally lost. You're in a commercial parking lot. This is the first time I found out that you continue through that parking lot. That's as far as I've made. I called a lift at that point. And so this site is once, and there are walkways. I tried about 6 different ways, and this would not pick. If you look in the corner there of, what is that? Fern and FEMA? Firm and
It's fine.
Fern. There's a walkway that goes into the school site. And to get to the school site from San Antonio is actually somewhat annoying, because to get to Cubberley from San Antonio, you can't actually just kind of walk there. You have to go all the way around the middle field, or you got to go all the way back around to the back of the school. And so if you're trying to get to, say, the shopping center, it's I don't know why the site's like that. It has some of the pathways there. Once you learn they're there, you figure out how to get onto the site and off of it. But that's my feedback, is really be cognizant that this site kind of has subtle access points to it that have just evolved over time, but aren't really that apparent. But really the Caltrain, I think we're all looking to maximize public transportation, the Caltrain. Now, obviously you can't solve the Caltrain full pathway to the Caltrain, but definitely be aware that there's subtleties to this site that make it difficult. And, I'm also, I do a lot of mentoring for architectural teams at the university. And I am the mentor that always is saying, look at the 3 mile, circle around the site and draw your lines out from there. I'm always asking them, how are they going to bring their material into the site from the freeway and all the rest. So I know I'm that one comment that's always going to ask for the pathway. So with that, my next comment is I want to, and this one here is a question as well, is have you envisioned what material is going to be used for this site? Is this going to be a timber construction? Is this steel, or is this concrete? Or are you 100% not specifying or even having an idea? Because my colleague over here brought up the great quote by Vitruvi, which is form follows function. And then the second quote after that, Vitruvi said, make sure you build with something that's nearby.
Yeah, we won't get involved in the material selection at this stage. Master planning, we're not going to be, that'll be happening in the architectural phase.
So does your massing have any effect on that? Because there are some configurations that favor one or another.
The massing that we're developing can be built in any of those materials.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And through the chair, first a request, maybe if you could stop sharing just so that we can see everybody here in the room. But I also did want to share, based on that comment and question from Commissioner Peterson, that we do anticipate bringing a discussion of the early stages of the San Antonio Road Area Plan to the Planning and Transportation Commission in September.
Thank you, Ms. Armour. That's good to know.
Great.
All right. Next, Commissioner Heckman, followed by Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you, Chair. So in this round, I really want to talk about a couple of high-level kind of big picture items. And then in my next round, I will address the feedback requests. So the first kind of big picture point I want to make is this is a project that started in 1991. And so what that tells me is that even in 1991, there was significant momentum and recognition that this needs to be different. This needs to be better. It started, it stopped, it started again, got stopped by COVID, and now we're starting again. And I'm really happy. I enjoyed reading the staff report because it gave me a sense of forward motion that it could really happen this time, and it needs to. It really needs to. In 1991, I just moved to Palo Alto as a baby lawyer, and even if this moves forward at the pace which it looks like it can, by the time the first shovel goes in the ground, I will be retired. And that's not very long from now. So it's long overdue, and I'm really happy it's here. And I appreciate the work that staff and the consultants have been doing. And let's just sort of keep the pressure on to move this forward. So my other kind of big picture point is, as I read through the staff report and was thinking about Cubberley, where my family has a lot of history, and it's hard to imagine. A lot of people have a lot of history with Cubberley from all kinds of different angles. But it made me think about the JCC and how when it was built, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, it was really transformative but it was transformative for a segment of our community. It's the segment that pays the membership, and there are some other things that members of the public can do, but primarily it was transformative for that segment. When I think about Cubberley and this master plan, I think it can be, and I think it will be transformative for Palo Alto, because it's our community center. I mean, this plan, it dwarfs Lucy Stern. It's going to be enormous, and it's really going to be this focal point for everyone. And there's no membership required. Of course, there will be classes you pay fees for, theater that you buy a ticket, but it's going to be a transformative space. And when I think about that, and I think that to make it happen, the current plan is we don't have a budget yet, but it's going to be large. I mean, when you just look at the buildings here, it's going to be a big number, and that number is going to be presented in the form of a bond to our taxpayers, our citizens. And what it made me think of is in this community we have a number of individuals with extraordinary wealth. And a lot of those individuals have displayed a capacity for extraordinary philanthropy. And I think this is the kind of project, a community project, that could attract some major donations, 10, 20, $30 million. Maybe there's some naming rights on buildings that are involved, but I think I think this would be an attractive opportunity for a segment of our community to contribute and relieve the taxpayers of some of the cost associated that would be in that bond measure. And so I bring that up because we're well over a year from that bond measure, and I would encourage staff to give that idea some thought about whether it has legs, and there might be an interest in some people in this community or companies participating in the funding for this project. So those are my big picture items. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Templeton next, followed by Commissioner G.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you said, Commissioner Heckman. I'm not going to touch on that. I'm going to reflect on some of the comments that we've heard. I do think you're right to keep the entranceway from this property to the adjacent property with the shopping center. So I don't think we need to say more about that, but it is definitely a favorite of the kids that were participating in activities close to that area. So that's the other thing I want to talk about. We heard some public comments about this, but we want to make sure that we've heard about sports and we've heard about theater, but there's plenty of other kinds of movement that's going to be important to our community at every age level. So I do appreciate the caller who mentioned making sure we keep the dance space and that we have that in mind. But also the ability to drop off, like Commissioner Chang said, being able to drop off our kids easily at those places, and be able to, if we choose, wait and shop and go pick them back up. So I think that is something that as a use case that doesn't appear to be represented in these designs. So when you do your next iteration, I'm really hoping to see a little bit more activities towards the sides in terms of parking and waiting. There's not currently a lot of great waiting spaces. I think there's one picnic table that may have recently disappeared down there. Anyway, so that's something to think about. So we need to have those kind of movement spaces. I like the concept of the pool, and that is a major construction project, so it should be represented in the designs if it's going to be part of them. So not having it here speaks volumes, and I can tell you in South Palo Alto, we are grateful for Rinconada, but very frustrated when it fills up, right? That's and we have a lot of pools at the schools, but those are for meets and not for recreational use. So we do need to see more of that kind of movement as well. So that's another sport that could be housed here. Another comment that Commissioner Chang brought up, but I think I'm going to comment on two parts of what she said. One is as far as what could the space be used for. When my kids were little, we spent a lot of time at the Stanford Oval. Like, there was nothing there. There's nothing but a picnic blanket and a Frisbee, but thank God for that, because I could get a nap and they get some activity and get worn out. So, I do appreciate that kind of space is included in the design, but if we're now being a little bit ambiguous about, is that space designed for like a lawn use or a forest use or a pool use or a tennis court use or pickleball? Like, if that is up in the air and not part of this design, it's going to be really hard to satisfy people at the polls, if that makes sense, right? We're going to find people making a lot of promises and people expecting different outcomes. So I would really think about at least narrowing down what spaces are up for construction for the outdoor use versus open lawn versus some other kind of planting. And then the other comment about something that Commissioner Chang said was pictures. And it sounds so silly, but it's not. It's like, why should my kid drive to, a pretty house in Saratoga to get her prom pictures taken with her friends? Okay, Lucy Stern is a good option. It's small. It's not going to house a lot of people. Are we going to make this place a beautiful place to hang out, to have a party, to have a photo shoot with your family, right? Like, what is something that gives back and pushes a little further than the use of the buildings, but helps enhance our enjoyment of our community? So I would like to see some of those alcoves and some of those smaller meeting areas. We do have really nice meeting rooms in the Mitchell Park Community Center, but that's not the same, and they're not built for like outdoor beauty and a place to sit and relax. They're for use, active use, as a meeting indoors. So I would like to imagine this Cubberley space in that way of being outdoors and really getting something special from it. Even if you don't have a specific activity, or if you're a parent waiting for your child at an activity, or if you're a sibling waiting for your other sibling to finish something. And then the drop-off points, that whole discussion about the grand entrance, I'm really enamored with the romance of the idea. I do echo some of the feedback we've heard tonight about the placement. So I would ask our friends to imagine from a very practical standpoint of welcoming people where they're actually coming in and enhancing safety. So the person, I don't remember who mentioned this, or maybe multiple people did, who mentioned that Middlefield is a very busy road. It's important to know that it's busy partly because of Coverly, but partly because it's a commute home. And so there's often a lot of people in a hurry hustling down that road, trying to either pick up their child, go get the groceries, or arrive home. And so we don't want people walking on there. Like if we have that beautiful space of Coverly available, wouldn't it be nice to have that path go a little further from the road, like we're walking people through in front of the new buildings and through a beautiful space to get from the Charleston side towards the San Antonio side. So from a safety perspective, I'd like to have a little bit more excitement about the pedestrian path adjacent to Middlefield, if we could. And I don't know how that would play out with the bikes. I mean, obviously they're going to want to go the most efficient route. We do want bikes to be comfortable using that space adjacent to the road, but if they don't, if they're a child, perhaps, or somebody less confident, maybe they can come inside this space as well. So just thinking about all of these different perspectives. One is beauty and enjoyment and being able to have a special space within the site, and the other is safety. And those are just some things we haven't really put at the forefront of the discussion. I'd love to hear that in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Templeton. Commissioner G, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll, like Commissioner Heckman, kind of talk about my overall thoughts first and go into the specifics at my next round. I actually want to echo a lot about kind of it being a transformative space. So I actually grew up here in Palo Alto, and when I was in high school, the Mitchell Park Community Center opened up and I was able to go to youth council there. So I have a very strong tie to the community services department, did a lot of programming there. And so I really appreciate and I'm really excited about the work being done here. I think a lot of, and I want to also echo Commissioner Templeton and Vice Chair Chang about the different usages. On packet page 19, it describes the open green space as one of the outdoor programs, followed by a playground, amphitheater, or pool water area. Those are very different, right? So just going to comment on that again. I also kind of would like to think about the usage. I kind of alluded to this during my questioning phase, the opening questions and clarifying questions phase. But I think a lot of the community members, when talking to me, have talked a lot about usage, and you can kind of hear that a lot in the public comment as well. It's like, I want a makerspace, I want a dance studio. And I think that from the public's perspective, sure, there are some comments on like, oh, we want a bike path X to X and Y, but I think like having a diamond-shaped building or a square-shaped building, I think isn't quite the right question to be asking the public. I think it's a lot about like, oh, well, what do you actually want to do here? And then from the activities, be able to say, okay, we trust professional architects in a later phase to be able to go through and make sure that the community needs are met. And again, I think it's very hard to comment on whether like which designs are good if, for example, the theater can't fit in the diagonally shaped building and things like that. Another thing that I think hasn't been brought up yet is the intersection between different community spaces. So the way I think about it is in North Palo Alto, you have Rinconada serving a certain set of experiences, a playground, a pool, library, while Lucy Stern serves other services, for example, like the theater and a bunch of other things like that. Yeah, and I think that given that Coverly is, let's say, 1 block away from Mitchell Park, I think it could be really interesting to think about, do we want to like, what is the intersection between these two use cases, right? Given that Mitchell Park is a lot of open field, is the correct usage for Coverly more open field, right? I'm not sure the answer is yes or no, but I think it's really important to think about. And I want to echo what Commissioner Templeton said about having somewhere like Lucy Stern in the South Side, right? Mitchell Park isn't really quite serving some of those use cases right now, but I think it could be really interesting to think about. And I also want to allude to a public commenter who had mentioned the Enjoy catalog. Given that that's a really big part of the community services department's selection, I think could be really interesting to go and say, hey, like, do we have somewhat parity, or do we maybe we want to plan to have some kind of parity at some point based on the usages here. And then separately, myself as a biker, I won't kind of harp on this too much, but I will say I definitely use the side entrances. I live on, I guess, the Alma side, so I definitely come in through the back. So I do use that. And I also do believe that when I come in from the car, the Montrose side is probably where I'd consider adding more transportation options. But I'll reserve my additional comments for the next round.
Commissioner James, anything for this round?
Yeah, I have to confess, I'm really struggling with this. And I think it's, I completely understand the kind of gentle pushback from my comments that it feels a little abstract and a little arbitrary, like geometrically arbitrary. But I would invite you, if it's not, supply the reasoning, supply the design reasoning, and start labeling things and say what they are. I really am having a problem with, you know, we're seeing bike paths, we're seeing footpaths, and we're showing polygons that add up to a certain square footage. But I feel like, and I almost feel like we're being asked to sort of ask, like, well, which bike path do you like and which pedestrian path? And then that's going to lock us into these buildings. And maybe I'm misunderstanding, and maybe the only thing is because Ms. O'Kane, you were saying what we're really trying to show here, and if I'm understanding you correctly, is we're trying to show where the buildings, the circulation, and the outdoor space. And that's a lot more general than what I think I'm seeing here. And we're both told that it's very early in the process. And if I heard correctly, it's like, well, but we're going to pick one and we're going to go to concept with it. And then we're going to have to sort of have the voters sort of act on that. And I still don't know why you broke these buildings up in this, you know, what are you putting in these buildings? And why did you decide to stack these two over here and those over there? You're not giving me something to buy into. And I'm sorry to sort of be, you know, I'm not going to win a popularity contest here, but I am really struggling with you asking me to sort of pick which one I like based on what kind of geometry. I just don't think that's enough. I'm sorry. I mean, I am very excited about this space. I'm very excited about having a place for a creative, that supports creative individual and collective creativity. Wonderful space, the most amazing piece of land that I've seen, you know, that's underdeveloped in Palo Alto. I want it to be, to me, the standard is the Rinconada Library, which I think was beautifully designed in the mid-century by Edward Durrell Stone, and it is aesthetically gorgeous. It functions beautifully. It enhances the environment. We get to do this once. And I think you're just asking me to raise my hand and say, I vote for that one way before. And when I do, I feel like I'm closing out a lot of options for the architect that comes next. I'm sorry. I'm just being very forthright with you. And I have a real problem with that. I mean, if you're saying to me, we've got this amount of square footage, but I mean, so these are 70, you know, these are rectangles that are 70 feet wide or whatever they are. So which I think is great to know that it really accommodates, but are we stacking them like shipping containers? Why did you put those there? And what is that? I just don't think you've provided me with a convincing case and a design rationale for why you did this geometry this way. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner. As always, I admire the insight of my fellow commissioners up here. You have all touched on things that would never have occurred to me, and changed my view of several aspects of this project. With that, I think I'm going to start the transition over to some of the more specific requests that you made. So let's see, regarding adjacency, most of my concerns have been addressed. The one that I'd like to emphasize is that I think a 4-story parking structure next to Greendale probably doesn't work. That obviously is an opinion shared by many people. I also am willing to accept a little more height, a little more density along Middlefield. There's several reasons for that. One is if it helps to support the below grade parking, then that's a worthwhile trade-off. If it helps provide a flood buffer, that might also be a consideration worth keeping in mind. And finally, the greater context of this project is we expect to have a dramatic expansion of housing along San Antonio. And I think one of the unavoidable consequences of that is that there is going to be more traffic on Middlefield. So I would like to use some of that height, some of that density, some of those buildings as a buffer between Middlefield and the rest of the Cubberley development. The various concepts have different trade-offs in that respect. The diagonal concept, I think, does the best job of using the buildings to buffer the remainder of the development from Middlefield. As soon as you put a nice rectilinear path that goes at a right angle from Middlefield all the way through the depth of the project, then you have line of sight and line of sound way back into the project. And the diagonal concept did a better job of breaking up that path. Also, with respect to the diagonal project, one of the things that I always look at when presented with a larger area plan is where are the desire paths going to be? If I'm at a given spot and I'm trying to get to another spot, am I going to take the path that's provided or am I going to cut through? And the diagonal layout, I think, does a better job of preventing the creation of desire paths. The two more rectilinear concepts, you're going to get diagonals through whatever's through that outdoor space. That's partly because of the people taking the shortest distance and partly because the size of the project and the entrance points are going to encourage that. So whatever final design is determined, please keep that in mind. I am not so fond of the small courtyard in the grid concept number 2, because it makes it harder to repurpose the land. And I think there is a decent chance that within the lifetime of this project, we'll be expanding buildings. So for each layout, I've also tried to look at it as if I needed to build on, where would I do it? And partitioning the outdoor space into too many small units makes that more difficult. And finally, along those lines, in concept 3, the Grand Promenade, it's so hard to use that for anything else that I think that represents a commitment of total available space that may be too large. So it sounds like you're already thinking along those lines, but I just like to emphasize that. So yeah, in summary, parking structure next to Greendale, the use of construction along Middlefield to buffer the rest of the development from potential increases in traffic on Middlefield, and efficient particularly walking access. Oh, that reminds me, the question I asked earlier about whether the bicycle paths would also have walking paths accompanying them is related to that. If you say, well, there are electric bikes that make it impractical for safety reasons to have people walking along the bike promenades, then you've created a huge incentive for people to generate more walking paths. Whereas if those paths can be used for walking as well as biking safely, then I think that's a worthwhile design feature. Right, I think that's everything on my list. So I believe we are ready for the next round of comments from commissioners. I have Commissioner Heckman first, and then Commissioner Peterson, and then Commissioner G.
All right, thank you. So I'm looking at the list, which is also in our packet at 14. Arrival and parking. It's interesting. I showed my wife the plans, and her and you know, we've had many activities at Cubberley, starting with preschool family and dance and all kinds of things. So she spent a lot of time there. And her first reaction was something that Vice Chair Chang mentioned when she looked at the 4-story parking garage. And that was, you know, that is on one side of the property, and there are all kinds of people with mobility issues of, you know, parents with small children, the elderly, disabled people, and to have them necessarily cross the entire campus is a lot to ask. I think that underground, partially underground parking that is spread across the whole face of the property is a much better. It really answers that issue, and so I think that's important. Pedestrian circulation, and I think of I see it as pedestrian, but I'm really thinking pedestrian and bicycle circulation for this one. And really, I bike, and I guess one of the things that struck me is if I'm biking to get to Cubberley in some building, then that's one thing. But a lot of the plan here is to get bicyclists through Cubberley out to Nelson. And if I'm one of those bicyclists, I really don't want to spend the trip through Cubberley dodging pedestrians who are crossing, not walking the same path, but actually crossing from, you know, these buildings to that buildings. And so I would think for the bike circulation, around the outside might be better. And you know, I raise these things, and I know there's a group of people that have been studying this stuff for, you know, since 2019. And so maybe there's a reason that doesn't work so well. But if so, you know, maybe that should be told to us. But to me, that makes a lot more sense. Take the through bikers out of the middle of the campus. And when you do that, then I think you have a lot more flexibility with the pedestrian circulation because they're not at risk of being run over by an electric or human-powered bike. Building scale and physical space organization. You know, I look at all three of these plans, and it's 280,000 square feet of building, and I really look at that as just a very fungible product. You know, I understand what's been told to us by the consultant, and I think it's right that these buildings will have a certain shape, but within that building, you'll be able to carve it up in all kinds of different ways. There can be small spaces, there can be large spaces. Apparently, you know, there's a specific plan for a space that's large enough for 4 courts. There's going to be something that's big enough for a theater. And so as I look at the plans, really because I feel that those buildings are kind of fungible in the different shapes and locations, I really tend to focus on the area around the buildings, the green space. And how will that best be used to be community space? And that really takes me to sort of my favorite of the three designs, which and I feel like from what I've heard, I may be in the minority here, but I really like the linear version. When I first looked at that, and I looked at that grand promenade, the first thing I thought of, and Commissioner Templeton mentioned it earlier, the first thing I thought of was the Stanford Oval, right? Which is this, it's just a big circle with grass in it. But on a nice day, it's full of people. And it's not just, Stanford students, it's full of people from the community who come there because it's just a nice space. Now, it's a little hard for me to tell. And so then the second thought thing that it made me think of was the Great Mall, of course, in Washington, where you are inviting people into a space where they can gather. Now, when I look at the design, I'm looking at packet page 35, I don't fully understand it because it looks to me like you've got the orange, what I think are the sidewalks on the outside, and then maybe these black dashes inside. I know one of the consultants mentioned there'd be separate bike and pedestrian. And if that's what's inside of the orange, then you're squeezing the open area down to, if that whole thing is 200 feet, you're squeezing that grass in between all of the bike and pedestrian paths down to, I don't know, 40 feet, which isn't big enough. So I think if we want to make, I think it would be a great design, and because it would just be a central meeting place. And I like it in combination with the front promenade along Middlefield, because when I looked at that, what I think about is Lucy Stern and how we have the pumpkin, the glass pumpkin sale, and there's another arts and crafts thing. I get those flyers that they're coming, I forget. And then I'm going down Embarcadero and there it is. And I remember, and I go around the back and park, and I enjoy those things. And I can see this front promenade along Middlefield serving that kind of function with the booths extending down the Grand Promenade. I can see, political gatherings in this kind of space because it's so open in the middle. We had our what is it, the No Kings rally, right? Which practically overwhelmed Rinconada. It needs a big space. And I hope that our citizenry will continue to stay vocal. And this middle opening with the Grand Promenade and the big green spaces on the side could accommodate that kind of use. So I really like that. And again, it's particularly if you take the bikes out of the middle, which is one of the reasons I sort of didn't like the diagonal, is because you've got these two nice big spaces, but you're funneling all of your bike traffic in between them. Balance of building and green space. I guess I've been listening to some of the commissioners talk about, maybe future expansion, right? We might need to build more buildings. It's impressive to me that with the figures we've shown, we're actually getting more green space in all of these than we currently have. So if we're going to think about reducing green space in the future from I think 335,000 square feet, which it's the figure, by adding to the 280,000 square feet of building, we want to create a hard line. I mean, I don't think we ever want to go below the amount of green space that we have at Coverly today, whatever that figure was shown. I just don't remember it. Because it is a lot of green space, and as has been pointed out, not very far away, we have Mitchell Park with a lot more green space. And then the last point I'll make it the discussion about possibly putting more height on the buildings along Middlefield. I understand why this commission has shown great sensitivity to scale across from single family residents, and I think that this design reflects that kind of thought. What I see is Middlefield's a wide road, particularly if you keep this big grass promenade. There's enough of a buffer that you can have a second floor, because even a second floor is going to be well under 35 feet, which is what we'd be looking at to build right next to residential, much less behind a promenade and across a wide street. So if more square footage is desirable, or shifting forward to that, I think those are reasonable ideas. But I do understand why the current planning kept the front low and sort of scaled back with the more elevation in sort of the second row. And in terms of being a good neighbor, we haven't really, I guess when I read that, I'm thinking about, are we adversely affecting the immediately surrounding properties? And so we just talked about that across Middlefield. We've got a school just to the south of us. We've got ball fields behind us that stay, right? The oval track and then the big soccer fields. And then, we've got commercial piazza to one side. And so really, I think the only real sensitivity is in what I think is the northwest corner, where you've got some single family homes. And what we're showing here is a pretty wide distance between the nearest buildings, at least in the linear approach. And you got a lot of green space over there. And so it seems like this, I think these designs are being a good neighbor. So those are my points on the 6. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see if I can figure out the chair this time. Let's see. Yeah. And all right, I'm going to follow up on the comment made by Commissioner Gee, that I also agree that looking at Mitchell Park and the Coverly as a single site, I didn't realize there's a walkway between these. It's only a 10-minute walk between these two sites if you know the walkway. Otherwise, I mean, they're worlds apart if you don't know that there's a walkway here. And let me check. I think there's a way I can draw. Where is the draw feature? Okay, where is the draw feature? We'll let you draw. Maybe we'll have a workshop on how to use Zoom. I put the blue dots. That's as far as I got. Oh, okay.
It's okay. You can use words.
I can use words because I don't know how to draw. Is there really no draw? All right, bottom left, drawing icon. Let's try this one more last time.
You guys had too much fun with it.
Whiteboard? No.
Sure, that's it, yeah.
It's this, I have to stop the share if I put the whiteboard up. I don't think you can draw.
Okay.
I've seen you do the draw on here. You did it once, and ever since then, I'm like, I'm going to learn how this works. Okay. So for the benefit of our architect here, maybe take a screenshot of this. And so the reason why I put this here is if I start on San Antonio Road, and then what I was gonna do is draw that there's not a large neighborhood there. But if you do look, and if I was able to draw, if you go down, do we say it's Fern? There is a walkway there diagonally, in the corner of Fern that goes into Coverly. Because right now you have to walk all the way down where the gas station is, and getting in around that corner where the gas station is, people, I mean, if you think people are flying in and out of Middlefield, they're going even quicker to get their gas real quick. And it's a really awkward corner to walk through. So you really do want to stay in that neighborhood. And it doesn't seem like a lot of extra walk to go down and around and come around to the fields in the back, but it's enough. But I think the idea here is this shows, I guess it'd be a north-south kind of approach of going from San Antonio to Mitchell Park through Coverly as a walking. And most of the walking path looks like it's there. It's, in fact, I think it all is there. Google won't show it, but you can walk from San Antonio right now to Mitchell Park. It shows here 23 minutes, but it's actually, about a 15-minute walk all the way through if you take the walking path. So I think that's one of the things that I don't see in your plan, and that's what I want to give the feedback, is that there is an existing walking corridor there that definitely needs some attention. But I think it's essentially the community corridor that the flow definitely follows a different route than if you're driving. And having been in that, in that neighborhood with the dance school and getting food and stuff like that, I do see people cutting through there all the time. So that is my comment. I think the other commissioners have covered the other topics well. But I also do agree that the parking garage being all one side, that actually is probably an issue, because this is a place where people stop for an hour with their kids run in, come back out, and there isn't any place to sit. You end up just sitting in your car in the parking lot, and yeah, it's just a mass of kids at the end of each dance class coming out and jumping in the car and going. So, okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. I have Commissioner G and then Vice Chair Chang.
Do you mind pulling up the criteria again? All right. I think most of what I want to say has already been said by other commissioners, but I'll just comment. I'm not supportive of the large garage structure on the side. And then in terms of the bike circulation, I strongly agree with Commissioner Heckman on the kind of wraparound. Especially because I went to Fairmeadow, and we would kind of walk through that little gate, the little yellow path that goes right through that middle. I do not want to be dodging people on my bike while they're walking through the middle of Coverly. And especially because I don't live, I guess, on the Montrose side, but I heard from public comment that seems to be a very common way to get there. And I think talking about kind of desire paths, I can imagine that, for example, that folks would want to get from the Nelson side through the Montrose side, and they want to kind of wrap around the outside. And I think that is something that we should think about supporting. So want to talk about that. And then in addition, I don't really think I have specific feedback on the pedestrian circulation. That seems fine. I think I'm more worried about the biking around, I think, is my recommendation there. In terms of building scale and physical space organization, I sound like a little bit of a broken record. I think the usage is very important. And I think something really easy like theater will take 1,000 square feet, and whatever, dance studio will take 1,000 square feet. And then just giving even people different options, like this building is 2,000 square feet, and it could be a dance studio and a yoga studio or something like that. Just something really basic to allow folks to imagine what that would be like. I think that also applies to your outdoor space organization as well. So I've been swimming since I was 3, went to Gun, been swimming since. And one of the things that I really hate about swimming at Gun is that their locker room is very far away from the pool. You have to really wrap around. It's very inconvenient. And so talking about outdoor, if we decide that a pool is an applicable outdoor usage, I think that's an outdoor and indoor combined usage. It's very hard to separate those two as concepts. So yeah, so I think that, and in addition, there could be some tie, I don't know, like outdoor basketball is near the indoor basketball court. Or I'm not sure exactly. I'll defer to your community services expertise on exactly what that looks like. But I think just having more use cases, I think would really help with both the physical space organization and the green space organization as those two tie together. In terms of like building scale, I think fellow commissioners will know that I'm probably one of the most sensitive about things like setbacks and daylight planes. And I actually want to agree with the fellow commissioners here that I actually don't really mind more height, kind of in any of the areas. As Commissioner Heckman mentioned, Middlefield is a pretty large road, and we're already allowing like a two or possibly 3-story buildings physically adjacent to single family housing. I think 100+ feet away is an appropriate usage, especially as if we make it kind of interesting and make it kind of a community center point on that front side could be really interesting. In general, I'm still a little bit confused about the usage of promenade. I think Commissioner Heckman has highlighted some of the use cases on the front side, which could be interesting. However, I do think that his commentary on concept 3 with the Grand Promenade, I really think that that's just a little bit too narrow for anything really to be useful there. I guess I'm a little bit indifferent about the front promenade. I guess it could be useful. But in general, I think like something like 70 feet isn't really that, it's good enough for like a walking path or like kind of like getting to and fro, but I wouldn't really consider that as like a primary use case for green space, let's say. And then in terms of being a good neighbor, I think that really involves some creative thinking about folks getting to and from. I really appreciate Commissioner Templeton and Vice Chair Chang's comments on dropping off kids. I think that I could imagine lots of traffic if anyone's driven through Palo Alto during school time. There's lots of parents, lots of kids. I think that being a good neighbor doesn't just mean managing congestion within Carberly, but on the neighboring sites, right? So for example, at Gunn, right, Georgia Street is a very common complaint from the neighbors because it's just like a convenient place to drop off somebody. And so thinking about making sure that access for transportation is pretty easy such that neighbors also don't feel adverse transit impacts is something top of mind for me, as well as something like the Charleston Center. I think just making sure that we don't see adverse effects on them either. So those are, I think, all of my comments there. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I have Vice Chair Chang and then Commissioner Templeton.
I too also really appreciate hearing from all the other commissioners and kind of the big picture thinking. Everybody's brought up something that I haven't thought of, so that's really great. Hopefully we've added some value for you guys tonight too. Most of my comments are going to, I mean, the idea of being a good neighbor is what spurred my thinking here. So one piece is that as we see on Google, we're actually really close to Mountain View. And so I don't know how much coordination or visibility we have into what Mountain View is planning to do. I think that if we do this well, it's also going to be a huge draw for Mountain View because it's much closer, much closer to where a lot of their housing is also going in. And so that's just, it's not a fully baked thought. I don't know what the implications are, but I think we're going to see a lot more traffic from Mountain View. If we have great, enjoy catalog, we're going to be serving Mountain View with that. So we need to think about how to do that well and to manage it also. Secondly, I was just over at the JCC and Moldau today, and they are two different organizations kind of on one fused campus. And because we're right next to PAUSD here, again, this is not a fully baked thought, but I think there's pretty big implications. And I'm not sure that PAUSD fully knows what they're going to be doing with their section of the site. But thinking about how the two it might, does it make sense to have it kind of feel like one campus, but two organizations? Because there's a lot of cross-pollination that could theoretically happen. I mean, there's adult education there right now as well. So that's another piece of being a good neighbor and the interactions there that might be really important to think about. And the JCC and Moldau do it really well. And I think, what do they talk about it as? A multi-generational campus, I think. And I've heard that same word being used in the context of Cubberley. So I think that there's parallels there that we could really think about. And they make it like semi-permeable, like, and I could see that being really useful here too. And then in terms of transportation, I'm going to bring in something on a different working group that I was in. This is in Portola Valley for Mid-Peninsula is opening up a new park there. And what they did in partnership with the city of Portola Valley is they're routing some of the bike traffic off of Alpine Road onto a little parcel of Mid-Pen and using that as a friendlier bike path for people who might not want to travel at such high speeds as they have on Alpine. And so because Middlefield it's already quite congested, as a number of commissioners mentioned, and it's only going to get more congested likely, there could be real value in like this site is well situated in that it could make a large section of Middlefield much more bike friendly if we kind of drove the bike traffic in to Cubberley, which is sort of what's shown, I think. But I think that's, some of the speakers were saying we don't want people on Middlefield. I agree, probably not on Middlefield. There's a really wide bike lane there, but it's pretty scary. And then people have to navigate those pretty scary driveways going in and out of the Charleston Center. But this piece of land, we could have the additional green space, trees or something there on the frontage. And if you bring a bike path in, like a nice bike path, that could make it much safer. And so I don't know what the the BPTP folks think of that, but it could help with some of the connectivity in that part of Palo Alto. And then finally, in terms of being a good neighbor, it sounds like there's more parking than there is right now, I think. But part of being a good neighbor is making sure that our parking, so often in Palo Alto, any parking that people can't see right away is not well utilized. And so as we think about that, how do we make sure that it's well utilized so that we don't create problems for Charleston Center, problems for the neighbors across the street, safety hazards as people park across the street and try to cross Middlefield, if there's actually really good parking there. And there's campuses like Camp Mountain View that does a pretty good job of utilizing their underground parking, Whole Foods in Los Altos. So what do they do to make sure to drive people there? And also, as I was looking at Google right now, next to the currently planned athletic fields, there is a giant parking lot, right? And I don't know that we can count on that in the future. And so that's just something to think about. And Commissioner G had mentioned, part of it is also to make sure that there's not a ton of congestion going in and out of this property. And if anybody's tried to drive on Middlefield next to when schools are getting in and out on it's completely, I think Challenger School is one of them, as well as trying to think where else, but it's a nightmare. And so what we wouldn't want is if there's some big kind of open house event or chili cook-off equivalent, something that draws like thousands and thousands of people, we don't want it to be a standstill on Middlefield, which we know is already a challenge for much smaller populations of organizations. And then my final thing is not related to being a good neighbor, but is neighborhood related, which is I really wanted to emphasize that point that Commissioner G made about considering, okay, so Mitchell's Park is just sprawling green, literally green space. And very, very close. When you look at the map, the distance from Mitchell Park to the Cubberley site is like the same as the distance of one end of the Cubberley site to the other end. So it's actually quite close. And we probably, we should think about whether we should be, I think, doing something different potentially than what Mitchell Park offers. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. What a good discussion we're having. I hope that our consultants and staff are enjoying it as much as I am. I want to start before I forget to tell you that I don't believe we have any 50-meter long pools in Palo Alto. We have one at Stanford and we have one at Foothill. I tell you that because it will draw people. 50 meters by 25 yards wide is a really good size for a pool. However, you may wish to consult other swimming families for that. Some great coaches and great teams in Palo Alto you can talk to. Anyway, I want to echo Commissioners Heckman and Chang about dipping the bike path in from Middlefield. I would be satisfied if it was a sufficient land buffer between Middlefield and the bike lanes, even if it doesn't go inside the buildings. So just to be flexible, just to share that. Retaining these buildings, these 3 buildings, can you remind me? One's an administrative building, one's a theater, and one's what?
Correct. The current renovated buildings being proposed is the pavilion, the I building, and the theater. And we can pull up a slide if you'd like.
No, it's fine. I'm looking at it. I just wanted to. Yeah.
Oh, and the uses. So inside the pavilion, it's a gym. So it's used for all sorts of activities as far as
okay. So
soccer,
it's
basketball,
not
volleyball.
It's not the stage.
The Cubberley Theater has a stage. And
No, I'm talking the outdoor one.
The outdoor stage. So the grassy lawn and the outdoor stage.
Just wanted to make sure I understand. So you mean the gym? It's called the pavilion, but you mean the gym.
Correct.
Okay. None of these facilities are worth keeping. And I have no idea why we're even discussing it. So I'm going to tell you that I have used 2 of the 3 of these. I have not used the administrative building, but I have waited outside of it during Nutcracker rehearsal after Nutcracker rehearsal after Nutcracker rehearsal. I'm unimpressed. I do not think it is a building that needs to be kept. So why do I tell you that? Well, it's cute on this map and it makes me think, oh, what if we had a space that was inviting and some structure that was attractive? I remember one time I went out to a rally in Tracy at a park, a nice big open space, and they had a little gazebo and we had a band and speakers and it was fun. I mean, I get it. That's a space that we could use and it would be possibly a place for shade, a place for outdoor stage and some kind of community gatherings. I can imagine that, but I wouldn't imagine it at any of these 3 buildings. That's just totally not cool. And I wouldn't be in the spirit of making an improvement to the facility to keep that. So I would say that the idea that's reflected in the picture, though, is having something that's a focal point, something that's a gathering point. That's very attractive. And I don't see that much on these designs, right? We have these designs that are very rectangular. Just because we haven't talked about the geometry lately, I wanted to throw that out there. But we could do something fun. We have something similar at Seal Park, for example. We have like a colonnade and wisteria growing up over it, but it's back in the corner. It's not a focal point. It's not the attraction. So if we're going to think about modifying our design such that the focal point is not the center of the Middlefield space, that is not even an entryway for vehicles, bikes, or pedestrians, perhaps instead we could have our focal point be interior and a target of trying to get people to gather there or have events there that would be fun for the community if we did keep that level of green space here instead of at Mitchell Park. So the other thought I have is we absolutely must increase the height along Middlefield, provided there's beauty, and that there's no reason we can't have both, right? We can have an articulated facade that the architects work on with the ARB, and we'll be happy as far as height goes, as long as we're not casting shadows or being ugly, like the back of a building kind of thing along Middlefield. I think the neighbors would be appreciative. I think they would like seeing something beautiful. Beauty can be any number of things. It can be trees separating the bike lane from the street. It can be climbing vines like they have down in Los Altos on the back of the Safeway. Don't do the back of the Safeway thing. Don't do it. There's all sorts of ways and creativity that we can use to make that a beautiful place to drive past and an attractive place that invites people in. So I would encourage us to do that. Would that allow us to have more outdoor space? Yes. See my first comment about the pool. Okay, so arrival and parking. We need to absolutely be able to access both sides of this. Assuming that Middlefield is considered the front, I would want the left and right both to have some kind of parking, not just the circle. The U shape. Balance of building and green space. The very first thing that our consultant said tonight was we have to use this space maximally. And we are not going to get another chance to design this for, I'm going to guess, 75 years at least. So we have to be more aggressive in what we're going to offer. We need this space. We need places for our nonprofits and our small businesses that provide after-school programs and movement instruction and all sorts of things for our kids and ourselves and even our elderly neighbors. And I want to say we have talked a lot about being neighborly to the immediate adjacent communities, but we have an elderly community right there at Middlefield and Charleston. And I'm going to guess we want them to be able to get there and enjoy services at the New Cubberley. So we need to take their needs into consideration, primarily access, right? And which I think is why you've got some drop-off points, but the safer we can make it for people that use their own energy to get to Cubberley, the better. And that's why we want to push the bike lane in a little bit. All right, I think that's it for me for now. Thank you, everybody.
All right, last call for comments. Commissioner James.
Sorry, I think my button's not working. I keep tagging in and it doesn't work.
Oh.
Okay, I am going to probably sound terribly repetitive here, but I'm gonna try and frame this in a different way. And I'm only going to comment on what I have strong feelings about. And I think one thing I feel like I heard several commissioners say, we care about setbacks, height matters, but I didn't hear anybody say we can't go up. I heard a number of people say, I think we could go up. Maybe that would give us more green space. Maybe there's some interesting trade-offs we should look at. So I think we need to consider that. And I guess the point I want to make in terms of buildings is I think I sense this a little bit tonight among the commissioners and in my in reading some of the reporting from the last meeting, it seemed like a lot of people kind of had a hard time making the choice. And I think we're overlooking the fact is that that's because they're very similar. I mean, there is nothing here that is radically different. It's like, well, okay, we're going to put this much square footage over here and this much square footage over here and this much square footage in this span. And in the next one, we're going to kind of do about the same, but we're going to, maybe we'll put them on an angle because this bike path is here or something. But I think these are profoundly similar in the way it imagines and envisions this space. And I think we're way too early to lock in on that. I think we need some radical rethinking in terms of how we get the square footage and how it's distributed on this beautiful piece of land and what the aesthetic, sort of payoff for that is. I want beautiful architecture. I want really functional space. I love what Cubberley does. I think we've got an amazing opportunity to take that to a level that actually is a part of Palo Alto's tradition. I'm the most recent one here. And I came to this town and I'm like, this is an incredibly progressive town. Look at all the public amenities here. And I want this to be like the best one, and there's some pretty great ones out there. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson?
Thank you. Didn't know that my comments on the pedestrian throughput, the walk path would be as interesting. I'm getting emails on that. So first time I've become popular. So what I want to bring up is if we can bring signage into this. Apparently there's multiple ways of getting, I found out, from the Caltrain station to the site. And simply I demonstrated it, that I'm pretty familiar with that part of Palo Alto, and I had no idea how to walk from the Caltrain station to Cubberley, which indicates that there probably is a need for signage. Because if you stand at that Caltrain at San Antonio, there really is nothing that says this way to Cubberley. And once you're at Cubberley, there's nothing that says Mitchell Park is over here. So I don't know how to wrap that into this project, but I think it definitely needs to include signage. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Templeton?
Thanks. I forgot to comment on some of the points that Commissioner James brought up, but I want to, if I may, take the opportunity to paraphrase for our consultants the important point that he was making. That line of thought is what our voters are going to be thinking. It's really important we've had library measures fail. We have had air conditioning in public buildings fail because we have not done a good enough job of envisioning and sharing the vision with our voters. So if this project relies on votes to exist or to continue, it's extremely important for us to share the vision of why we're asking for this. What does the building mean? It doesn't mean it's a building. A building's never a building, right? A building is what you're doing with it, right? What services you offer, who you're bringing together, how you're transforming the person's perspective on something or other. So we have to understand that, and I recognize that we're going to come back with a new iteration that refines this. I understand how designing works. You have, a rough draft and you iterate on it. But next time we get to see this, do we get to see it before council does? I don't think I saw that on the chart.
We're still working through that. I mean, it's a very aggressive schedule, so we're trying to fit a lot in. So we're hoping we can do that.
Well, one thing that our commission serves for is to help you anticipate the kinds of reaction you're going to get from the people who didn't show up to your meeting, because they contact all of us. I got to tell you, we get a lot of input that perhaps you're not receiving at the enthusiasm of the public meetings. So we try and synthesize that and help give you the feedback in a way that will help you understand, what is the needs of the voter to support this project going forward. And that's not this is a bond issue. It's not a political thing. It's just how do you help people understand why they should support the vision? So to be really specific about if it does come back to us, and I hope it does, because I believe we've given you a lot of really positive, supportive, actionable feedback today. But if it does come back to us, if you want us to decide where should the bike path go, we have to know what's here to help anticipate whether that bike path is going to meet the needs of people that are going to go to those buildings. So it's great. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to give you feedback this early, but some of the decisions or recommendations you're asking for from us might we might need to see the next iteration to do that. Thank you.
Commissioner G.
I want to echo what Commissioner Templeton just said. I think that this commission in particular has a lot of expertise in some of the handling like people movement and buildings that we see at kind of the later stages in projects. And I would love to see this come back to us if possible. And I also want to echo what Commissioner James had mentioned about the radical reimagining. We've had a resident who wrote like a piece in the Palo Alto Online who described this as kind of an illusion of choice, right? There are in all of the different designs, the square footage of the buildings and the square footage of the open space is the same, right? And therefore, there's not very much comment you can really provide except like, oh, I want to move this building over by like 100 feet. And so I'd love to see both the use cases as well as some of the other considerations in terms of like maybe people want more green space. People maybe want more building space. I know this has been brought up that this was discussed in 2019, but I would have loved to see that in the packet, like the description of like the different use cases that have been provided in terms of what people actually wanted, and then the amount that people wanted and how that tallied up to the amount of square footage we got here, right? I think that if we're going to have to ask the voters to approve a bond measure, I'd love to see more kind of option, like they can actually provide feedback as opposed to this quote illusion of choice that we're hearing.
All right, with that, I think we have given a great deal of feedback, and we need to let our consultants wrap things up now. So shall we conclude this item? Very well, it's done.
No other questions. Just thank you so much for all your feedback and your comments. And yes, we have lots to digest. And yeah, we thank you for your feedback.
Thank you, and congratulations on working on a project that everyone wants to see succeed.
Yes.
All right, I suggest we take a break. It is now 8 minutes to 9. Let's return at 9 o'clock. We will now move on to item 3 to review and submit the PTC 2025 to 26 work plan to City Council for approval. Ms. Armour, could we have your presentation?
Yes, thank you. We've got the work plan that we can share on the screen. Don't have any additional presentation beyond that. But I will point out a few things about this Planning and Transportation Commission work plan for the coming year. This is something that's requested that the Planning and Transportation Commission consider and make a recommendation so that council can consider it in September. The first page here lays out the role of the Planning and Transportation Commission and the work that we do. And the second page includes some of the prior year's accomplishments, and then we run through the 8 projects and goals that the Planning and Transportation Commission is expected to work on in particular over the coming year. This is not an exhaustive list. As you saw on the previous page, there are quite a few things that are in the purview of the Planning and Transportation Commission. And so not listing it here doesn't mean it won't be something that comes forward if council requests an additional effort be considered and recommended by Planning and Transportation Commission. One thing to point out from your last year's 8 goals and projects, there was one in regards to the Safe Streets for All plan, and that was number 1, which was removed since it was just completed. So a great accomplishment from last year. And then we added one more at the end, proposing an additional one that has a specific, adds one specifically referencing code updates beyond what we get in terms of updates based on state law or comprehensive plan. There are sometimes recommendations from council for additional work. For example, the ordinance, while this is something that currently is unresourced, it is still an item that has been requested for future work, both by the Architectural Review Board and by Planning and Transportation Commission if it involves code changes. So that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to go through the goals or just have the discussion proceed in whatever way you wish, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we go through the usual format of clarifying questions? And this is eligible for public comment, although I don't know that we have any. So any
Correct.
questions? Any questions for everyone? Well, I actually have 2 clarifying questions. But fortunately, you're well prepared for these. Do we anticipate any tasks this year related to the Stanford General Use Permit?
We do not. I did, per the question you shared with me, I did look into that. The county would not proceed with that until they received an application from Stanford, and they have not received an application from Stanford at this point. So we would not anticipate that during this fiscal year.
Good. And then the second is of a similar type. Do we anticipate any tasks this year related to grade separation?
I am not aware of any. I think that would be one of those that if it got to a point where it was ready for review by PTC, we would bring it to you regardless of whether it was listed here.
Very good. That's all I have. Anyone else with questions? No? Mr. Tavera, do we have any public comment?
Through the chair, I've received no public comment cards, and through Zoom, I've received no raised hands or public comment requests.
Thank you. Okay, then we are open for general discussion. Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you. Just a few brief comments. So in the prior year accomplishments, the last bullet point is some work we did on what I think are quasi judicial activities. So, 3 vesting tentative maps, a PC and a PHC. And so I was wondering why our work plan doesn't include, that we'll tackle these kinds of things as they're presented. As a number 9. So that was the first thing I noticed. And then a couple of a suggestion in project goal number 6, updated bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan and increase, I think this should say safe connectivity across the city, because that's really the focus of it. Is, I can ride my bike across the city. What we're trying to do is make it more safe. So I would suggest that that's really, and that's the beneficial impact, I think, is enhanced safety. So that's a suggestion. And then just above the language project goal 6, under high priority, the second sentence, I just didn't understand. Additionally, the public welcomes opportunities to engage with the PTC on this topic. Isn't it that the PTC welcomes the opportunity for the public to engage with them? So take a look at that sentence and see if maybe it could be reworded to be a little more clear. And those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Chair Chang.
Same placeholder comment that Commissioner Heckman and Chair Aiken had mentioned in pre-meeting. And then I thought that, so if you look at the high priority, lower priority, I think this is a template element in the project goals 7 and 8. I just think we should change it to NA, because we don't need to say anything if nothing needs to be said. Because it just says some of the program, it's just self-evident statements. And I think we just sound a little silly there. In addition, I thought that for project goal 7, since this is something that council had asked us to do, we should say this includes streamside corridor changes and bird-friendly design, streamside corridor and bird-friendly design changes in Title 18, just because that is something that we did work on in the past that we know needs to come back to us and was requested by council. So it kind of recognizes that they've asked us to do it. And then finally, I think this comment came up last year when we were having the discussion about how these are meant to just list some projects and goals in no particular order. They're not prioritized in any way. I thought that I don't know if we should be explicit about that these aren't numbered to indicate prioritization, or I think somebody had suggested if we just said A, B, C, D instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, that might make it seem less like a prioritization. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you. So one of the goals that came to mind when I was watching this, and this isn't a recommendation to modify here, but I did want to raise the question, which is that over in Mountain View, they have an agreement with the building trades that they will accept some of their high school graduates into the union apprenticeship program, which, you make, it's like $250,000 a year in your 5th year. Starts off at $50,000. By your 5th year, you're at $250,000. That's without overtime. And then after that, company trucks and whatever else they give you. So their planning commission isn't as strong apparently as ours. I don't know what they said. Their words, not mine. Guess so. They said they brought up that entire process of making the agreement with the building trades so that their high school students get into the high wage jobs, went straight to city council. But apparently, because we are so influential here in Palo Alto, it would be something that might even start here if we looked at who is our workforce, what is our workforce pool? Do we want, like when forgot his name already, from the Carpenters Union calls in and says, hey, please, what's Renee? Yes. When the other one is Eli calls in. And so when Renee and Eli call in and they say, hey, you know, make sure you use local labor, that's what they're saying, use the high wage labor. Well, shouldn't that be our high school graduates here? And I would say, well, do any high school graduates from Palo Alto even go in the trades? And they do, because they end up at Stanford, because they're all paid 250 grand a year, and invariably they come get master degrees from Stanford. And I meet them and I hear all their stories about Pali High and stuff. So it's not a lot of students, but we're not talking about sending a lot. I mean, there, you know, a lot is like 3 for the building trades, because it's a little bit of a slow turnover there. So I wanted to bring that up, that if we wanted to start rolling that process of making sure that when we approve projects, that it's our students from Palo Alto that end up on those projects, wiring up the building or whatever, making those high wages.
Thank you. Did you have a concrete proposal you wanted to make to for us to vote to add to the work plan?
I could make a proposal that staff looks into that for the feasibility and just comes back and gives us some information. I'll just kick it down the road a little bit.
Okay. Ms. Armour?
I could provide some additional information at this time. One would be just an initial reaction that that is a bit beyond kind of the purview of the Planning and Transportation Commission. However, we do have a program in our adopted housing element that is about encouraging local hiring, that is connecting with local labor unions and apprenticeship programs within the city. And so that is actually part of a document that the city has already adopted, that is an effort that there is interest in supporting. So from a staff perspective, I would not recommend it be included as part of the work plan, but wanted to inform you that that is actually an element of one of the planning documents we have.
That is an interesting question on the purview of the workforce as the planning commission. It's a subtlety, but is it really, it just flips over to council?
Would you consider possibly looking into a study session about that so we can have a
Right.
depth of a discussion that
Council
may
would
not be available
appreciate
at council?
Yeah.
It's the level of work that I would say would need to be directed by council to open up a topic like that, that is beyond the normal scope of the Planning and Transportation
It would
Commission.
come back to your staff, because you're the only staff that has the knowledge of the actual, you know, building.
Which is why I'm not interested in encouraging adding it to the work plan, because I
Right.
know we already have so much work that I
Yeah.
don't anticipate that being prioritized.
Oh, got it.
But
I
wanted to
understand
make
that.
sure that you understand that it is actually something that is already part of the housing element implementation, is some discussion of related topics.
Okay. Can we be kept updated on that as it moves along?
The actual implementation program in that case is about providing information on the website and encouraging applicants to consider it. So it doesn't go beyond that at this time,
Yeah.
but it could be in future planning documents. It could be
On that one there on the encouragement, it's more difficult to be admitted to the building trades than Stanford University. And it usually has a 3-year wait list. So that's one of the concerns, because I work with East Side, is they encourage all their students to apply, but then essentially nobody is ever admitted without the one-on-one agreement.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Commissioner G.
Wait, just to clarify Vice Chair Chang's comments, these project goals are or are not intended to be a prioritization list, Ms. Armour?
I would open that up for discussion of the
Okay.
Planning and Transportation Commission. My understanding is that it is not supposed to be a prioritization, but you can discern from what is included that there are certain projects that are included individually, and then there are others that are part of a kind of group or category. And so by that, I would say that does show that there are certain efforts that are given priority by being given their own project or goal.
Any other comments? If not, I have a few. Okay, I'm going to reinforce a comment made by Commissioner Heckman that I think one of the important purposes of the work plan is to document for other people and groups what the PTC does. And therefore, things that we spend a fair amount of time on should be documented in the work plan so that they understand that's part of what we do and how our time gets allocated. So that includes reviewing individual development projects and the other categories that Commissioner Heckman mentioned. I'd also include transportation projects, including traffic calming. We've looked in the past year at shuttles, micromobility. So I think it would be a good idea to have separate goals in the work plan that document that kind of ongoing task. And they don't seem to fit perfectly, those tasks don't seem to fit perfectly into any of the goals that appear in the draft we have tonight, even though they are mentioned in the mission statement. So my inclination would be to perhaps take a vote to see whether the commission supports adding goals that document those two classes of ongoing tasks. So I'm.
Do you want to make a motion, maybe? I mean, if we need it, or do we need a motion, or how does this work when it's our work plan?
I can jump in and provide an initial answer to that. What I would recommend this evening is I've heard a list of modifications, and I can read those, summarize them for you, that could be made as a recommendation that this be continued, that those modifications be made and brought back to you at your July 30th meeting for a formal recommendation to council at that time. So I would ask that we get a motion to make sure that we do have consensus on the modifications that are under consideration.
All right, so do we need two motions, one for continuance and then one for the agreement on the items to be considered at the continuance?
I think I would recommend it be a motion to continue with the following modifications. We'd list out those modifications. As I said, I'd be happy to help by describing those and listing them out, and then see if there is support for that. If that one does not pass, then an alternate motion could be made to continue with a different list.
Very good. All right, and then I sense Vice Chair Chang is interested in making a motion, but if not, oh, you have a comment? Please proceed.
No, I just wanted to add one more thought in terms of organizing these projects and goals. If nobody seemed to chime in with anything, any desire to make a prioritized list, but I wonder if sort of in the interest of furthering sort of like the communication to not just the public, but to the council of like how we spend our time, we could, if we organize them sort of, if there is any ranking, it's sort of like, this is what we spend the bulk of our time on, right? So, I mean, my reaction to it is specifically because we have retail ordinance updates #1, and like, we're likely not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on that this year. We're going to be spending all of our time doing these two kind of placeholder additional projects and goals. And like that might be more valuable in terms of ranking them. So that's just a thought if we need to organize them in some way. So.
Commissioner Templeton and then Commissioner Heckman.
I would just wonder if is it to us to prioritize things? I think our priorities come from council, so I'm not sure that prioritize, you know, if I think it's what you're saying.
Exactly. Right? Like there's no point coming up with a prioritization, but if we're using this as a communication document, because when I presented to council last cycle, just a second. Okay, when I presented to council last cycle, it didn't seem clear to me that council understood like what all we've been seeing. And I mean, some council members really understand it because they came through here. but not all of them seem to really understand. And the feedback that they gave me on certain things was kind of like, well, okay, sure, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. So since a good chunk of our time is spent reviewing potential developments, if we put that as one of our project goals, right, it's clear that those come to us when they come to us. That's not a prioritization. It's not really our choice, but it is our purpose. So I don't know, but not prioritization.
So you want to add? I mean,
I think this is what both Commissioner Heckman and Chair Aiken were suggesting, to the addition of two, what's the best word, placeholder, like two goals.
Core job versus special projects?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I agree that it would be more representative of what we do, but I also feel like it's ridiculous. Like that's not any shade on anyone here, but like if we're going to drive from here to Fresno, we do not have to list that we're going to get the car checked out, make sure the belts are good, it's gassed up, there's fluid in the radiator, right? Like those are just part of the job. If what you're saying is that you're hearing feedback from the council that they don't know what we're doing, I'd be concerned. That doesn't concern me about what we're doing. That puts the concerns in other places.
I wouldn't limit it to council. I think there are other readers of this document, including potential commissioners, who need to understand what it is that we do.
Perhaps they don't need to understand it by reading this document only.
If it helps. I'm sorry, I stepped in. Oh.
No. I stand by my it's ridiculous comment, and I would not think we would need to make a change or continue.
Sorry, I stepped in front of you, Commissioner Heckman.
No problem. I just, before I get to what I was going to say, I just noticed at the beginning of this document, we just need to refresh the date, which is still listed as a 24-25. Okay. So, and I would love for this not to have to take staff a lot of effort or bring it back. And so what I'm wondering is if we could just, for example, this notion that I had that what about quasi judicial matters as they're presented? I was then thinking about, well, okay, if we make that project goal number 9, we've got to fill in all these boxes, and wouldn't it be simpler if we just at the bottom of the boxes add 2 sentences? The first one says that the numbering of the above project goals does not reflect any priority among them. That's the first sentence. And whatever, yeah. And then the second sentence says, in addition to working on the above project and goals, the PTC anticipates that it will work on a variety of other matters during the work year, including transportation issues, quasi-judicial discretionary projects as they are presented, and
regular ongoing responsibilities.
Yeah, just more of a generic statement at the end that ties it off.
Yeah, I don't see much difference between that and adding project goal 9, regular ongoing responsibilities.
So what would you put under?
Would you ever take it off?
What would you put under beneficial impacts? Right, because again, if you're going to make it a project goal, then we have 8 boxes to fill in. Right. So first, what are the beneficial impacts? Well, it depends on what it is, but whatever it is, it's good because that's why we're asked to deal with it. All right. Timeline. Well, it depends. And so I'm trying to avoid sort of having to answer those specific labels with something that we know that's coming, but we don't know what it is.
More than that, it can't, those responsibilities can't be removed. Everything 1 through 8 can be removed, reprioritized, changed. But our everyday responsibilities are written into the city charter, right? Like this is like, has to be done.
Yeah, it's simply that's not the purpose that I have in mind for adding it to the work plan. The purpose is communication to other people rather than defining for our own use what our duties are.
My feedback is not that we shouldn't communicate. My feedback is I don't support this being the way of communicating that. I think adding it as an addendum or having it in another document or somehow defining the roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission is important. I just don't know why it has to be on the list of priorities. Thanks.
Any other comments? Oh, wait, Commissioner G.
I think as someone who before attending my first PTC meeting, read through this document, I think, I guess to both sides' points, I think there's not that much difference, although I personally have a slight preference towards marking it as a project/goal. And addressing Commissioner Heckman's comments about what all the boxes are, we can defer to project goal 5 on packet page 45, where like all the boxes just say like ongoing, continued engagement from public. So I guess it doesn't really matter either way, but I'm just saying that it should be pretty easy to just copy all those boxes and throw it at the bottom. So relatively indifferent either way.
Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. About the commission is an excellent place to expand on what the commission does if it's not project specific. Current commissioners does not use the name that I go by. I'd really like that fixed on every location, including this document and how I appear on these desk monitors. Yeah, if Commissioner G's point is some of these things shouldn't be goals, I'm happy to strike them.
Commissioner G, was that your intent?
No, that was not my intent, no.
All right, well, we need to move forward. So what I suggest we do is we make a motion as in roughly the same structure as Ms. Armour suggested, and we see how the vote goes. And then we can, if that motion fails, then we proceed to an alternative.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Have any of us referred to this document at all in the last year?
Unfortunately, the chair has to make a presentation to council about what we do and fill some slides with information.
But since then, I mean, I'm just asking, do we understand the use of this?
Yeah, I mean, but it's a communication document to council and the public. That's what it is.
And we still think council needs to have a refresher on what we do.
Well, it's not so much that it's a refresher on what we do, but we're supposed to report on our projects and goals. And if 90% of what we do isn't listed as a project and goal, it makes it kind of awkward. Like it's a template. The point is that we, as you well know, we are different from other commissions and boards. We don't decide we don't go, what do we want to do this year? And then pick. Most of what we do comes from somewhere else. So
it'd be really helpful. One project I would add is to get some statistics that we can show to council when we're presenting this about how much time we spend on things that aren't on this
right.
list.
So what we find ourselves doing is there's like often a template that everybody's kind of following. All the commissions are following, right? And there's no place for us to put that. We certainly make an extra place. So this is a way for it to be
amazing
fed
to
in.
give council feedback on this particular template that has never been useful for us.
I think I think Ms. Armour mentioned that it's being reconsidered or something this year. Is that right?
There are some revisions to the handbook that includes this template. I do not anticipate changes to the work plan formatting. That didn't see any revisions to that. It had to do with other elements of that overall document.
Commissioner Heckman.
Yeah, so it seems like the chair and I are in agreement that this document needs to have some reference to this other work we do where we have kind of a different vision is where that should go. Should it be a project goal or a blurb? Honestly, I don't feel that strongly about it. And so if the if the chair has a vision for how it could look as a project goal, so I will say that if the chair will make a motion to express that vision, I'd be happy to second it, and we'll do it that way.
All right, I'll attempt to do that, but before I do so, any further comments, analysis? Commissioner Templeton?
Yeah, I have a question. Did you write this document? Is this the first time you saw it? Were you able to give this feedback before it was presented to us?
Okay, you've asked multiple questions there.
They're all driving to the same point, though.
I did not write this document. As far as I know, Ms. Armour wrote this document. And yes,
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I have seen it because I saw it before and discussed it at pre-meeting.
But there was no opportunity for you to give feedback before it was included in the packet, basically.
That's correct.
So that would be part of my feedback as well. If it's going to be something that the chair has to represent to the council, perhaps he should be involved and be able to give feedback sooner. I don't know. Because what's going to happen is we're going to have to add this to the agenda at the next meeting and like discuss it. And it's not a great use of anybody's time. Thank you.
All right, so I think this is one of the rare cases where the chair needs to make an executive decision. I do think it's important that it be represented. And as Commissioner Heckman said, there are multiple ways to go about that. And I'm certainly open to other ways if the first approach doesn't make the grade. So I would move that we continue this item until July 30th and until the date certain, July 30th, and that we address the issues that we have been discussing by adding project goal 9, patterned on project goal 5, as suggested by Commissioner G, and that the substance of the goal should be ongoing quasi-judicial review of development projects and transportation projects. We can add additional examples if we so choose. So,
and I think there's a list of other small things that Assistant Director Armour wanted to rattle off, right?
If it would be helpful, I can list the other corrections, slight modifications that I heard. One was to add the word safe into the beneficial impacts of goal 6. Another was to modify the wording under the high priority section of goal 5. A third that I saw or heard was changing the high priority, low priorities for goals 7 and 8 to be NA. Adding to goal 7, specific mention of streamside corridor and bird-friendly design work.
correcting Commissioner Templeton's name.
And correcting Commissioner Templeton's name.
And the date.
And the date.
And the date.
Did this motion include a continuance, or is that something
Yes.
staff can accommodate without having to have a motion?
So
Without having a continuance in Parliament?
I am comfortable moving forward in whatever way the Planning and Transportation Commission wishes. If you can make a motion that is specific enough in terms of creation of this new goal, then I think we could move forward with that as recommended to council. It also could be handled as a very quick item at your next meeting if the Planning and Transportation Commission would rather see the actual language before forwarding that recommendation. Staff is comfortable doing either. The existing motion does include a continuance, so that would need to be modified if that was not the intent.
Right. I think we should see the language just to verify.
I was going to suggest an option for you that we could vote that you see the language and we don't have to bring it back.
Is that
Since you're the
sufficient?
maker, and we could all say, we trust you, and the intent would be recorded in the minutes.
I would defer to Mr. Yang if he had thoughts on it. However, I will share that given sometimes we have ad hoc committees that do additional work after a final decision is made, this could be similar advice from the chair. But Mr. Yang, are you still on Zoom with us? Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, that would be a perfectly acceptable way for the commission to act.
All right, that sounds like an approach. Commissioner Heckman, does that sound okay for you?
Yeah, I haven't seconded yet. I was waiting for the whole motion to get wrapped, but I think that was the last piece of it. And so I second the motion as made by the chair with the additional information augmented by our assistant director.
All right, so we will not be continuing then. So you need another motion without the continuance?
No, you can modify. I will clarify for the record. What I have heard is that you accepted the suggestion to modify your motion so that instead of continuance, it would be recommending approval with final review by the chair to confirm final language, and that the seconder has accepted. If you can both verbally confirm that, please.
I confirm that interpretation.
Yeah, that is the motion that I seconded.
Point of clarification here, and that the language that will be included is what we discussed. So, thank you.
All right, does that provide sufficient guidance? All right, so we need a vote.
All right. Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Chair Aiken,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Very good. That concludes this item. So we move on now to item 4, approval of the PDC draft summary and verbatim minutes of April 30th, 2025.
Move approval as revised.
Second.
Technically, we could have public comment on this, so I should ask. Okay, good.
Ready for the vote?
Very good. No comment. Yes. Shall we proceed with the vote now?
Commissioner Templeton,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chang,
Yes.
Chair Aiken,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. And now it's time for commissioner questions, comments, and announcements. Does anyone have anything? I do briefly, so if no one else does, I'll be quick. Since the last time we met, there's been a community workshop and an advisory group meeting for the downtown housing plan. And I just wanted to give you a brief update on that. The community workshop presentation is a good place to get an overview of what's going on if you're interested. And there is also a much more detailed assessment report. The easiest way to find it is just Google Palo Alto Downtown Housing Plan, and that will land you on the right page. The quick summary is that currently very little housing development downtown is financially feasible. The main problems are the economic conditions, competition from offices for the space, the small site sizes, and parking. In the public comments, you can find an analysis from Ken Hayes that touches on some things we might do to improve the situation, and I recommend skimming that if you haven't already. More on this will be coming from staff and the consultants in the next few months. Commissioner G.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be joining the San Antonio Road Area Plan. We'll have our first meeting in August, and I'll report back afterwards.
Any other comments? If not, then we are adjourned.